What's the last podcast you were on?
It's been a while. I think the last podcast I did. Well, so I did the Alexi one, but that never got aired or anything. The last one I did though was I think my hey, I'm not really that much of a terrible person podcast in San Diego.
So I
think that was the last podcast.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, I think so.
I watched that one, and I think it's in entirety. I might have skipped the last couple minutes, and it was hard to watch at some points because I feel like that guy was trying to put you into a.
Yeah, those are fun though.
He was trying to smooth you out for the fan base.
Was this a San Diego?
It's weird because he would throw me a impossible to answer question. He didn't actually say this, but it would be something along the lines of you were involved in a terrorist event. How do you feel about that? And it's I don't know how to answer that question. And then I'd answer the question, and he'd smooth it over we all sometimes get into something like this. And I'm like, how can you throw me such an absolute impossible to answer question?
A grenade.
And then once I answer the question, try to smooth it over, And I get people have their disagreements on things and whatnot.
Yeah.
But again, the point of that whole podcast was I had to go on it, and we'll talk about this probably in a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the fans said we're not coming to the games if he's a part of the team.
Yeah.
Well,
which is crazy.
Let's officially kick it off.
Which is crazy.
We literally did that by saying, ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Carleton, former Atlanta United player.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So I think a fun place to start is kind of at the beginning in the sense that both of you had a similar developmental upbringing in that you were both at Georgia United. Came up through the ranks there, and then both of you took very different professional career paths in that you went overseas.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, we heard, at least at Dirty South Soccer and doing it for the podcast, we heard that you had looks from overseas, but you decided obviously to stay here. What went into that, and what ultimately was it a deciding factor for you in trying to maybe do something overseas versus sticking around here?
So back, if I rewind the story a little bit back, whenever I was 12 or 13, I was over in the Man City Academy, playing on the same team as Phil Foden. Me and him were best friends, went to school together and all of that stuff. And that was kind of my dream, was to get over into the City Academy because Atlanta United wasn't even around yet.
Yeah.
Scoot your mic a little bit.
And so
you're good.
After that, I was over there for about 8-9 months, off and on, because you couldn't legally be there full time without a passport or a visa and that stuff, and I didn't have a European passport. So then I came back in Atlanta, and we kind of had a communication because New York City was just starting. The kind of plan was that I was going to go to New York City FC, play for a couple years, and then once I turned, whether 16 or 18 or whatever the rules were, is that if I was good enough, go back to Man City. And then during that time, Atlanta United was announced, and that kind of took, I was like, if I'm going to play in MLS to start, I'd rather be at my hometown team.
Yeah.
That was the coolest thing ever, and it kind of felt like God was kind of opening a door that only really He could open, and it just felt like it made sense that was where I was supposed to be, and kind of talked with them, and they kind of laid the path out that fit perfectly with what I wanted, was to start here in Atlanta, play a couple years, be not a major part of the team right away, because that was our World Cup year, my first year in 2017. But become a big part of the team in the first couple years, and then as I turned 18, I have a bunch of games under my belt, and then could move overseas somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think if I were to look back, my dream was to go to Europe at first, but legally it wasn't allowed. So
you would have to wait till you turned 18.
Yeah,
because you got signed at 16, right?
Yeah, I'd signed, on my 16th
So you would have had
birthday
2 years anyway, no matter what.
Yeah. And so it was rather that or stay in residency, the national team program that was around back then. And I felt like it was better off for me to get reps in games playing professionally than sitting around, training with kids my age. I just felt like that was, I wanted that next step.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was the right decision.
But that ultimate goal for you was still starting here in Atlanta, getting, experience, but you're still in the back of your head, you're thinking, my goal is to get to Europe at a certain point. And was Atlanta, were you in Atlanta on the same page with that? They were like, hey, we want to develop you, we want to turn you into a pro, start your career, and then when the time is right, we move on, we sell you, whatever it might be, and then you make that next step to Europe.
Yeah, that was the discussions that I had with Carlos and Darren.
From the beginning.
From the time I was 15 years old. At the time, yeah.
And it's crazy to me.
And so that was
I
always
can't wrap my head
dream.
around the fact that you're 15 talking about,
Yeah, I mean,
stuff
I
like
had
that.
dreamed big since I was a kid, and I always wanted to be a professional soccer player, and I had kind of proven it going overseas and playing with the Man City Academy that I was capable at that level at a young age.
How did that opportunity even come about? How did Manchester City how did you even get that a chance?
So my coach that I trained with growing up, he was a trainer. He saw me at a field because he coached at Cobb FC back in the day. His name's Garvin Quamina.
Oh, I forgot about Cobb FC.
Yeah.
The Cobb FC is not it's SSA
it
now.
became SSA.
Okay, yeah. I forgot about Cobb FC.
And so he just spotted me at the field one day because he was helping out with our team, and he used to coach Shaq Moore, who plays the Nashville national team right back. And he had just moved to residency. So he was kind of looking for a new kid to help train. And so he came up to my parents and he's like, "Hey, I want to train your kid." And my mom and dad were like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, he's good. Like, I want to train him." And my parents were
what's
like,
the catch?
we don't really know you, and I don't have my parents don't have money just to throw around for sessions to do all the time because we know those things can be expensive. And he's like, "No, I don't want anything. Like, he's just good. This kid's gonna be good. Like, I want to train him."
Didn't ask for anything.
Didn't ask for anything. To this day, like, obviously, like, I brought him out for a nice dinner and stuff like that to pay him back down the road. But it could never repay what he did for me. And so we trained 3 or 4 times a week at Mud Creek, 8 a.m. I would do that. I was homeschooled, go to school, train in the afternoon. So anyway, after a couple of years training with him, he is from Trinidad and Tobago. He has a friend that works at the Man City Academy, and he talked to me. He's like, "Hey, I have this kid. He's good. Like, he needs to try something new." So they lined it up for me to go over to Man City. First day I get there, they have the main Man City Academy team, and then they have what they call the City Select, which is just like, basically it would be like Atlanta United having like a club soccer team. That's just like kids that pay to be a part of Atlanta United and play. So I get there, we have a friendly the first day I get there with the City Select team. No, I don't know this. I'm just thinking this is the Man City team.
This is the Man City, And
I show up and I'm cooking. I'm like, dude, this is easy.
This is easy.
I can handle this. And then I go after the game, and they're like, "Yeah, so we're actually gonna put you with the main academy team." And I'm like, "That wasn't the main academy team." And I'm like, "They're not bad. Like, they were better than like the club team I played on, but like I was good enough to ball out." And I think I scored like 2 goals, had an assist or something like that. And so like, it wasn't like they were terrible. They were still better than the competition I was playing like at my local Georgia soccer team. But I was like, dang, like I'm really good because these kids like
you're flying. At this
I'm
point.
flying against these European kids. That everybody says is so good. And then I find out later that like I'm actually going to go train with the actual academy team. So the story is that they didn't actually think I was going to be very good. That they were just kind of doing a favor for a friend, and so they stuck me with this group of kids, and then they're like, "Oh wait, actually this kid is really good." So then from then on, I was training with the Man City official academy team,
where Phil Foden was,
Felix Nemecha, who played at Dortmund, was on that team. A couple other guys that have played professionally at different levels.
Was Jadon Sancho there too?
No, he wasn't there yet. He was still, I think, at Watford or wherever he started out. But anyway, so then I had finished out my trial there for 10 days or 12 days or whatever it was.
How old were you at this time?
I think 13.
Okay.
I think I was rather 12 about to turn 13 or 13 about to turn 14.
So you're still much really under the radar. Like
national team hasn't
even started yet.
So it was whatever the year before that was.
Is that the first time you're thinking, oh, this could turn into something?
Are
you even think? I mean, you kind of answered already, but like, is that even in your mind? Like,
that was the first time that I had like kind of assurance to this thought that I was good and wanted to play pro. So I always had that dream, but it's like, it's hard to tell at that age, and you don't know what else is out there in the world at that age.
At that kid, you were just a kid with a dream, and now that you've gone through this, like, oh, this could actually happen.
Now I'm playing with the best kids in the world, and I can hang with them, and so now that belief is kind of, I don't know, confirmed is the right word, but now like I have more belief that I do want to do this. And so after that, they invited me back a couple months later, and that's when I stayed for a handful of months.
So you stay with months at a time and then come back home?
Yeah. So I finished there the whole like spring season basically, and then came home at the end of the season in the summer. But wasn't able to play like their league games and stuff, but to play tournaments and whatever. And so we had a tournament in Italy that was against Ajax, Benfica, Inter Milan, AC Milan. Like all the big name teams were in this tournament. And so it's funny because we played against Serginho Dest, who was one of my teammates that I didn't know until years down the road.
That you guys had played against each other?
Yeah, he played on the team at Ajax. But so anyway, we played the tournament. We lost in the semifinal, I think, and then we got 3rd place or 4th place or something like that. But Phil Foden won Best Player of the tournament, and then I had won Midfielder of the tournament.
Really?
So that was another thing that kind of said, okay, like I can go play against the top academy teams in the world at my age
and compete
and be one of the better players. So that was a big moment for me, and to kind of, you know, growing up I was good, but I was always kind of not super self-confident or like I had all this talent, but sometimes it wouldn't come out in games because, you know, you're nervous to make a mistake and this, that, the other. And so whenever I was able to go do that, it really gave me confidence coming back here to America with national team stuff starting out. ODP region teams and stuff like that, to where like that really catapulted like who I was for the rest of my life.
Did that flip the switch also, like your playing style? Because growing up playing with you, I've always known you as kind of like I don't give an F about what I do. I'm going to play with flair. If someone's going to try to put me in a box about how I play, whether it's 1-2 touch, making the simple pass, like, you know, I want to play my game. Like, you know, I want to do tricks. I want to flicks. I'm going to shoot it from halfway line, try to get it over the keeper. Like, would you say that moment in Man City kind of like gave you the confidence to come back home to the United States and be like, you know what, like I'm gonna show myself and just
that was something that I think confirmed everything that I thought in my head. Of like, you know, a couple of these coaches that I have growing up are telling me stop trying to flick it over somebody's head or nutmeg this kid or whatever. And at that point, it wasn't. I don't want to sound like arrogant in the sense of like nobody could tell me anything at that point, but like it was one of those things where I know I can do it. And there's kids around the world that do it, so why can't I? Like, American soccer's never been good at developing creative attacking players. And so if this random coach from over here is telling me don't try to nutmeg this guy because you should play it backwards or sideways or whatever to keep the ball, like, that's not me. I'm not better than everybody else because I pass it sideways and keep the ball and whatever. I'm better than everybody else because I can do things that nobody else my age can do. And that's why I was really good at a young age. And unfortunately, I think I lost that over the years. I think that was one thing that really hurt me in my career is once things started to not really go great, I started to lose that confidence. I lost what made me great.
And you're starting to second
I wasn't
guess
better than everybody else at receiving the ball and passing it and being smart and being whatever. I was better because I could create things that nobody else could create. And whenever I lost that, then I was just a regular player. And nobody wants a regular player that also is an idiot, you know?
But that's interesting then with the whole Manchester City Academy, how that came about, because I would think that they would have known your situation of not having a passport and, like, you know, not being able to sign until 18. So I feel like some academies or an agent or whoever brings you in that moment is just going to be like, I'm not even going to take the time to do this because what's the point if you can't sign?
Yeah, that's why there's no
18?
agent involved.
You
know, that's part of the reason why it was probably possible.
But was Manchester City investing their money into you to come out there, or was it something that your parents were doing? You paid for everything out of your own pocket?
I didn't pay for it.
Well, but your parents are the ones investing to this trip for you.
That was one thing is my parents, I mean, I didn't grow up wealthy or have everything in the world, but my parents did everything they could to always give me and my siblings the opportunity to do what we needed to as far as chasing our dreams or career or whatever it was. I think they realized that this was a great opportunity and moment for me, and not every kid has that ability to do that. And so I think that was a good thing, too, for them as well to say, okay, like this investment that we're making in our son chasing his dream, it's not just for nothing. You know, it's not like it's some kid who doesn't really have a shot at making it and we're dumping hundreds and thousands of dollars into it. I think that was also good for them because they're like, okay, this has the potential to pay off down the road. But that was something that I had to, or my family had to pay for the first trip. After that, I don't really know how that worked. I don't know if they're legally allowed to pay for it. I don't want to.
Yeah, I think
get all the coaches in trouble. Like, I don't know how that worked. I knew the first one we had to pay for.
I'm curious. Up until that point, so that was 13. Up until that point, what would you say is like the thing that stood out to you? What stands out in your mind in terms of your development that kind of got you to the point where you could take on something like that? Like, what
was it? Talent at that point? Was it someone that?
Was it just pure? I guess
was
it just pure talent?
It's one of those things where I sit back a lot now that I'm not playing anymore. I don't want to kind of officially say retired, but kind of retired.
No, you got to announce your retirement.
Yeah, unless Man City's coming and knocking at the door, I don't think I'm going back. But I think about, like, if I was, because now I train kids on the side now too, coaching and stuff like that. And so some parents ask me, you know, what made you really good? Like, were you just better than everybody else?
Yeah.
And to answer the question, I don't think I was. I think I put in more time and hours and at just playing soccer. You know, I was homeschooled, which helped a lot.
Yeah.
I would train in the mornings every day, basically 3 or 4 days a week, which I guess isn't every day, but every day of the week.
Yeah.
And then I have my team practice at night.
In the afternoon.
You know, the club would my club team would train 2 nights a week, and then I would train with the high school team on the other days. And, like, I was just training as much as I possibly could because I loved it.
Yeah.
And so I think I was born with natural talent, don't get me wrong. But, like, I don't think there was much of a difference between my talent and then any other talented kid out there that just became a college player or whatever. I think I was obsessed with soccer growing up, and I put in more time and more effort and worked on things that nobody else worked on. You know, we'd be out at Mud Creek training on a Monday morning, working on receiving the ball and then scooping it over somebody's head and putting it on the ground and then scoring.
Yeah.
And just stuff that nobody else worked on. And it's like, people will look at it and be like, oh, well, he's just naturally talented to be able to rainbow flick somebody in the corner and cross the ball into the box. And it's like, that didn't just happen. That was because hours and hours and hours and hours doing it with a bunch of random people walking around Mud Creek with nobody watching.
Yeah.
Trying moves that, like, you'd look out, if somebody was driving by, they'd be like, what is that kid even working on? You know?
What is this kid doing?
But, like, that's why I was good at it.
Yeah.
It's because I think I put in more time and effort than anybody else.
Yeah. I think there's, like, two sides of it. I think that for the most part, anyone that plays at a high level and plays professionally or goes and plays, let's say, Division I college soccer, I think that they have a certain talent, right?
Yes.
Like, you have to be talented.
For sure.
Like, you know, you can see a kid and, like, if he doesn't have it, he doesn't have it. It's going to be really, really hard for them to play at a high level, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they could put in so many hours and hours of work, but it's going to take so much time for them to catch up to an already talented person. And so I think that you have to have the talent to start, right? But then the talent can only get you so far. It's you know, eventually there's going to be a point where you need to put in that extra work that you talked about in order to fulfill that talent that you have to make it to play it at the next level.
Yeah.
So I think there's like two sides of it. You know, you have to have that talent.
I mean,
100%.
We've all played with kids that were really talented that didn't put in any real work,
and then
only
that's
got
when
X
that
amount
separation,
of
that's
success out of it.
Yeah.
But we've also played with kids that were not very good that put in a ton of work that got above the kids that were really talented.
Yeah.
So one of the sayings is always, you know, crap, I can't even think of it now. Talent beats
hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Yeah.
That was one of the things that was installed in me by my trainer growing up. Was that yes, I'm talented, but that talent doesn't mean nothing whenever you're comparing it to kids all around the world. Like, you might be able to get away with it in Georgia soccer, but again, that was never my dream.
Yeah.
It was always to play in Europe, play MLS, play national team, that type of stuff.
So were you homeschooled from, like, kindergarten up?
Yeah, I never went. The only school I ever went to was IMG.
was that a residency? You know? Was that your parents, like, just not liking the public school system, or was it like soccer prodigy, like, we want to make this kid, or all your brothers, like, and your sisters, like, we want to make him?
we whenever I first started to get old enough to start going to first grade, second grade, that stuff, we weren't really in a great school district from what I can remember. And so then we had moved up to Cobb County, got in a better school district. And then I guess the first year or two, I just kind of, like, continued being homeschooled because that's what I was doing. And then by the time I was kind of starting to think about going to school, we had met Coach Garvin, and I was training in the mornings.
Like,
and
loving
I
it.
want to train in the mornings and do my homeschool. And then it just got to a point where whenever I started to get old enough to where, like, you start caring about, like, you know, a social life and hanging out with friends and stuff to go to school and meet new people and whatever, I didn't have the time because you're missing so many days traveling with soccer. Like, there's no way I could have done some of the things that I was doing. Yeah. Similar to, like, you know, Chris Goslin. I see where you dealt with that a little bit as well.
Yeah. Would you, so we'll obviously touch into a little bit more, but just kind of, like, prefacing it, would you say that maybe had an effect on you when you got older to, like, as far as the social life, the
and that
nightlife, that kind of stuff? Because like, as a child, you didn't have, like, so many social connections, right? Because you're homeschooled, you're training all the time. It's soccer.
Yeah, I think a little bit, to be honest. I think that it was weird though, because I never cared about any of that stuff until I got older. But I think where I still, even whenever I turned pro, I didn't really have an interest in majority of, nightlife stuff, partying. I was still really young, but I didn't care about going to high school parties and this, that, the other. I hang out with all my friends and stuff, and I was popular because I was good at soccer. So it's not like I had a lack of friends or people to hang out with. Soccer was my dream.
Yeah.
I started to want to get into that stuff more as I lost the joy with soccer. Yeah. Whenever I started to hit roadblocks, for any other reasons, but my life revolved around soccer. That was my happiness. Whenever something else over here was wrong in life, I always had soccer to go train. And get my mind
I was the
off
same way as a
everything.
kid, yeah.
And all of a sudden, I woke up one day and soccer was the problem, which it had never been. And so I didn't know how to handle it and deal with it. And so I started looking other places for
happiness or just forget about it.
And instead of, I wish I was the person I am today, because whenever you get in those situations, the best thing to do is to look to the Lord.
Yeah.
And He can fulfill those things and help you through it. And that would help me a lot if I was a better person back then, I think. And instead, I started to look at the things of the world to help me out.
Yeah.
And that was not the best decision. And again, we can get into I disagree with why I was in that position and why I was upset with soccer because of outside factors. But I still decided to make those same decisions. So I don't have anybody really to blame but myself.
Yeah.
But
what was the first, I guess, thing that pointed at soccer being the problem?
I think my first year at Atlanta United was when it kind of started. Because, again, I wasn't expecting to walk into the professional life and be a starter on the team right away.
Of course, you're 16 years old.
Yeah. But I thought I was going to be a bigger part of the team than I was. Because
I think, to your credit, I think everyone did.
Yeah.
I think the idea was to eventually sell you off. And for that to happen, you had to get substantial minutes.
You got to prove yourself.
So I think
I think the times were different too. I think nowadays you can see a Lamine Yamal, 16, 17-year-old breaking in. But maybe we're talking about in 2016. This is 8 years ago. I feel like you see it, but it wasn't as popular as it is now. Where some clubs have to throw in a kid, and they thrive. And I feel like maybe at your time it was a little too early.
Yeah, it was a little bit.
And clubs weren't doing that yet. They weren't investing in that 16, 17 year. They'd rather give the opportunities to this 24, 26, 28-year-old player that's already mature.
One of the things I think about too is that Atlanta United was good from the start. A lot of expansion teams are not great from the start, and you can it's fine to throw in this young kid and maybe we don't get all the results. But Atlanta was good from the start.
Yeah.
So we were always competing. So there wasn't really that opportunity to give a young kid a chance if you didn't feel super comfortable that you're not just giving him a chance. He's earned that chance type of thing. Now, I felt like I had earned that because in preseason, that game in Chattanooga, all the other preseason games, I was playing really, really well. And compared to my competition who was in my positions years and years older than me, have more experience for sure, I felt like I was competing just fine and even better than them.
Yeah.
And then as we get into the season, it's a weird year because that's our World Cup year. So here and there I'm kind of in and out of the team because we have international trips and stuff that aren't lined up on the FIFA calendar, because I don't even know if MLS did a FIFA calendar back then. I don't think they do it now.
I don't think they do it now.
Yeah.
I think they
do
still play throughout
they
do international breaks, but I think it's up to the team if they want to play during the international break or not.
But so there was times where I was in and out, but especially at the beginning point, we had qualifiers, which I missed some chunk of time with, but then there was a big gap of 3 months before we really had anything going on. And my first real ticked off moment was we had an international camp that was John Hackworth was our national team coach, and it was a tournament or camp in Argentina where we were playing a few friendlies against Uruguay and Argentina, a couple teams. But he had said specifically in our conversation with him that this was a camp for roster spot 12 through 22 of the World Cup team. So it's
Fringe players.
Yeah, so all your starters are not going to this camp because he's trying to figure out who is going to make that last few spots of the World Cup team.
That's great. I didn't realize that's how it worked. Was that common that you would have?
No, this was the only camp that we did this like
this.
this.
Gotcha.
But this was right after qualifiers, to where we got 6-8 months till the World Cup, And so we have one camp before we really hype up the...
So the main team's already kind of...
he's trying to look at a couple of guys on the fringe to see who's going to make this, like... Now, this is not like a set number, but I'm just coming up with numbers of the final 35 that I'm going to look at for these next
It gives
6
him an
months.
opportunity to call in an extra 10 players because the 10 players he knows are going to be there.
If you brought in your top 25, you wouldn't be able to look at the next 10 30, to see if they could get into that roster.
And maybe you find a gem out of there. Exactly, yeah.
And so that was the point of the camp. So Josh Sargent's not there. Tim Weah's not there. Who else? Chris Goslin wasn't even supposed to be there. But me, I think Chris Durkin wasn't there either. But like those are starting guys on our team back then. And so anyway, Hack says to Carlos, hey, we don't want Andrew or Chris for this tournament. We've seen them for years. We know them. We don't need them for this camp. We're trying to look at other players. And Carlos was basically trying to go back and forth to get us to go to this camp. And he's like, no, like we need them to go because we want them to get in shape because we got an Open Cup game coming up right after it. And so we want them to go play a couple games because I haven't been playing much with Atlanta. So we need to make sure his fitness is good so we can play in these Open Cup games.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't even really that upset about that at that point because I'm like, oh, that kind of makes sense. Like I wasn't a huge fan of going to the camp because I'm still trying to break into Atlanta's first team.
But you have a surety that
but I'm like,
okay,
I'm going to play in the Open Cup
game.
Yeah, I'm going to be sharp. I'm going to play good, and then I'm going to go on from there. So anyway, I go to the camp. Things go well. Solid camp. Come back. And the Open Cup game's like a week later. And so we're training for it, and I'm like trying to be as sharp as I can. And the Open Cup game comes around, and they name the roster, and I'm not on the not starting, which that was kind of the whole plan.
The whole plan,
you don't need to get in shape to play 20 minutes at 16. So anyway, I'm not starting. So then I'm ticked, but I'm like, okay, you'll be the first one off the bench probably. Like you'll go and play 30, 45 minutes, something like that. Because all the starters for Atlanta United aren't playing in that game. It's against Charleston Battery over at Kennesaw State. So anyway, game goes on. It gets like 60th minute. Still not in the game. I'm like, golly.
You're warming up on the side.
I got to be here soon, And the whole game goes by and I don't play.
You didn't come in?
I didn't come in at all. And a couple of the guys that I didn't feel like had played as well for the last 6 months as I did were playing the whole game and actually played pretty well to where now the coach is going to look at it and be like, okay, this guy might be able to play.
Yeah.
Whereas like I feel like I just missed a huge opportunity to show myself, and these other guys that I didn't really feel like as deserved it.
Yeah. So do you think that was like Carlos and Tata not being on the same page, or like who was that? Whose
at
decision
that point,
is
I
that?
don't know.
Yeah.
Later on in the story,
that was Carlos who was making that decision at that point.
Was making a decision for him to go, and saying like, "Hey, we have an Open Cup game." That's where,
But like, obviously, at that point in the story, I'm just thinking it's Tata that doesn't like me, doesn't want to play me. But like, I didn't know really the full story at that point. But anyway, so I don't play there, and I'm kind of ticked. And then we go to the next Open Cup game. I actually do start, and we're playing Miami, not Inter Miami, but Miami FC,
the USL, yeah.
And I played really well that game. I won the PK for the assist, or not for the assist, for the goal that tied the game. So I felt like I was doing really well, played well. I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity for me to kind of get into the team now. And it didn't really change anything. But we had the World Cup coming up at the end of the year.
This is 2017.
This is 2017. Camp. So I then, at that point, just turned my focus to
the national team.
So I'm like, all right, let me go have a good World Cup. And if I can show I can do it in the World Cup, like you hear all the stories of guys having a great World Cup and then they go here and go there and that blows them up. So
was your mentality that 2017 was going to be a lot of, I guess it would have been a lot of World Cup stuff, a couple minutes here and there, and then 18 would have been the year? Yeah,
so, and obviously I forgot on this story too, I'd made my debut against Houston Dynamo right before that camp. So that was another thing that got under my skin was that I felt like I just made my debut. I'm breaking into the team now, and now I got to go away on this trip and like lose all that momentum. So that was another thing that kind of got under my skin. But that was the way I was viewing it, that 17 was going to be a mixture into the team, national team stuff as well, have a great World Cup, and then come back in 18 and then be not Almiron on the team, but like be a big part of the team.
A bigger fixture.
And that would kind of be 2018, I would play, get a bunch of games, start a bunch of games. And then that would be my jump overseas. That was the pitch also from kind of the start, is that you're here 17, mix in with the team, 18, you really get your jump, and then rather after that year or one more year, you're going overseas because then you're 18, 19.
Now, as professional, like, did you ever have anything like that happen to you? Where you,
Yeah,
is that a thing that happens just at a professional level? Like sometimes the plan just changes a little bit. Did you maybe you didn't see it like that at the time, but like looking back, do you think maybe just plans changed a little bit as opposed to?
Yeah, I think plans definitely change,
and not in terms of, and not in like long term. Not in a long-term aspect in terms of that 17-year, but just in that instance where all of a sudden you're not playing in that Open Cup game.
Yeah, I think I think plans change with people that you don't have a real interest in. So I think if you have some kid, some player at any age that you think this is a big part of my team, whether today or in a year or two, we're going to do all we can to make sure that they get a good path through, that they get the help they need, that they get those opportunities, or that if they don't, we're communicating with them why you're not or why plans have changed. I think if you don't really care, and professional soccer is tough. Like it's a job. You got to go do it. You got to prove yourself day in and day out. And there's some guys that just aren't liked by coaches or GMs or anybody. And those players, I think plans change, and because we have 10 of these guys, we can go get somebody else. So if he's ticked, we don't really care. But if you really care about him and he's somebody that you think is going to be a huge part of your club, I think you do all you can. And you see that in a lot of situations where guys that you care about get away with a whole lot more than, some random guys. And at that point, like
they have a very thin.
Yeah, some people have a very thin line,
lines.
And people that like are a main part of your team or that like is somebody that you think is going to be a huge future talent. You do all you can to make sure that like they get what they need.
So you're saying pretty much saying at this point you think that they don't care about you as much as maybe you think you are, so that's why plans were changing.
In 2017, I didn't really think much of it.
Yeah.
I was mad that I didn't play and whatever, but again, I was focused on the World Cup. I wasn't even that upset at this point because I went and had a great World Cup, I thought.
Well, I feel like that can happen a lot, right? I mean, even in my situation, it happened too. I was playing overseas in Belgium, and then we had that U20, that World Cup qualifying year. And every camp, I wasn't playing in Belgium. Like I was on the bench, wasn't.
That was your escape spot.
That was my escape spot. Yeah. My escape spot was to go to the national team where I'm a part of it. The coach trusts me. The coach believes in me. I'm with teammates that I want to fight for. You're playing for your country, which is like the greatest feeling, even if it's just in the youth levels, right? It's still an amazing honor, great feeling. And you go there and it's like your safe haven. Like you can go there, you feel a part of something. You're playing games.
You're back with friends.
Friends. That's when you like start to enjoy it a little bit. So
especially as a young kid, whenever you walk into a locker room with guys that are in their mid to late 20s, most of them, you don't really have much in common to where
them.
like
exactly.
You're friends with them, but it's not like your best friends that you grew up playing with, where you don't really have. You feel a little lonely in that regard, and so whenever you go in with the national team, those are your boys.
And it's just a different perspective too, because in the club level, they're your teammates, but everyone's kind of competing with each other, right? Because everyone, if it's a guy in your spot, he's fighting for his contract, he's fighting for him to play, he's fighting for his career. Yeah. With the national team, everyone kind of has one goal of like not playing this. Everyone wants to play, right? But everyone has the same goal of.
But you're not fighting over that.
You're
paycheck.
not fighting
you're
over
not fighting over
exactly.
that next contract. Now, you are fighting for a contract, but it's more of a like showcase type of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where like if you guys go and win, everybody's gonna succeed. Whereas like it's kind of the same with the team, but it's also like if I'm not playing with my club team, I got to play on my club team to be able to then get to the national team. The national team is the reward. So if you're not playing on your club team, then if you're not a national team guy, you could be out of a contract by the end of next year. You might be dropping down to the USL. At the USL, you're not making nearly the same money in the MLS. I have a family I got to support. Like, I'm getting a little bit older. I don't even know if guys will give me a contract that is going to fit for me. I might have to retire. Like, there's so much else that goes into it than just you and your homies going to play soccer like it feels on the national team.
Yeah.
I guess the context behind the situation with the Open Cup is that up until then, you had been kind of touted as the prospect for Atlanta United. All the fanfare that came around with your signing and the homegrown deal and all that stuff. Which do you feel like that messed with you a little bit? All that the treatment that you got,
the outside noise.
Yeah, it's weird because like if I say it now, like I think people would just look like, oh, look at this arrogant dude that like thinks he was so good. Like at that time, I was so good, and I was like I was there for a reason because I was good.
Yeah.
And I felt like I deserved it, and I felt like I was good enough to do it. And the times that I was able to get on the field and show that, I think everybody that watched it with like an unbiased perspective now would say, yeah, this kid's easily good enough to be at this level and play.
I think for anyone that hears that and thinks, oh, that is a little bit of arrogance. No, at the time,
it was true.
Yeah.
We were all like, why is he not playing more?
Yeah.
Why is he not playing more?
Like we're not talking about a kid that's just thrown on, he falls on his face.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh,
and
no,
to cover up some of the arrogance, like, I don't think I'm nowhere near the level that I was back then. Like, even after a lot of stuff happened, by the time I was 22, 23, I deserved to be a USL player. Like, I lost a lot of what I had whenever I was younger, and I was not, like, when I was at San Diego or Las Vegas, like, I knew I was not the same player. And that's hard to deal with, but, like, I'm not coming at it from an arrogant side of saying, like, I today should be playing at Man City or blah, blah, blah. You know, like,
no,
but
back
at that
then,
moment,
at that moment,
I had felt like I'd showed at any level I could possibly play at that I was as good as everybody else at that level.
Yeah.
And so the only reason I felt like I wasn't playing was because I was some young kid. And so that frustrated me because I was like, I've always been the young kid playing up. Like, I love that feeling. I love the responsibility. I love the challenge. And I was obsessed with more and more and more challenge, which probably was detrimental because I got super impatient.
Would you say that, so starting, your U.S. youth national team career from, under 14 all the way up to U17, U20, right? Would you say that was like the happiest that you felt, the best, most informed, the best years of your life? That's when you feel great, So like, kind of talk about it like from the beginning, right? When you make your first, national team camp, a U14, U15. Was your first one the one that with our group with the 99s? Was that your first? No, you didn't.
I was with Chris. Went with the 99s.
Yeah,
I was with
Chris,
the 2000s. So I was like, I don't know, a year there, and then I started.
And then you started coming up to ours. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those were by far the best years of my life. Like, I think some of the best years of anybody's life, basically. But it's hard to explain, like, the joy and just the happiness that, like, you had playing soccer back then. Because at that point, there was none of this, like, outside noise involved in the sense of, like, I don't know, you just went and played. And, like, it was so weird because now I feel like whenever I would play in the last couple of years of my career, I had to mentally get right because there was so much going on around here, and I had to focus and make sure I could clear my mind out and get in the right headspace and try to live up to some expectations and this, that, the other. Whereas whenever you're a kid and you're younger, you just went out and played. And the more expectations you had, the better it felt because that means you were good. Like, you had to be good to get expectations. And so I loved the challenge. I loved whenever I'd come up with the 99s, I was pumped. I remember being ticked in my room one day because I looked at the roster for the first time after our first national team camps. They had a couple 2000s go up with the 99s.
Go up with our group.
I was in there almost in tears in my room, sitting there like,
why?
They got fucking Chris Gosling there. And me and Chris Gosling weren't super close at the time, but he definitely deserved it. But I was like,
Chris
they
was
got
a good player.
Ray-Sean McGann or some other guys
we had even one other player from Georgia, a center back. I forget who it was that went to the first one. It was like me, Chris. I forget his name. Maybe he was 99 with my group.
Yeah. But there were a few 2000s that went up.
There were,
I wanted that challenge so bad because I was like, all right, I went and did it with the 2000s. Like, what's next? Like, I want to go up. And so that was, I was so competitive in my head because I just continued to want to challenge and challenge and challenge. And so whenever I would see guys around me that were my age doing something maybe better than I was, I had to push myself to get to that next level.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. You just go out in Mud Creek with Coach Garvin and just train harder.
Yeah.
And then eventually I got up with the 99s and then became a starter for a lot of camps on that team. And
I remember that first camp that he came in with our group because our group was pretty established at the time. And then, I obviously knew him from both of us being from Georgia. We played together. But he was kind of with his 2000s group, and then him getting that first call up with our group. So a lot of guys didn't really know him or didn't know anything about him. So I knew, like, okay, this guy's a baller and he's a good player, but, like, he's going to have to earn the respect of the group, right? And the guys are going to have to see him, and he's going to have to prove, himself. And I think what was that first the first game week, because normally you have a week of training and then you have, like, 2 games. So, like, maybe if you come in on a Monday, you're playing, like, a Wednesday, you're playing, like, a Saturday, and then you leave Sunday, right? If it's, like, a 7-day camp.
Yeah.
I think the first game Hugo started you.
Yeah, that
Hugo
was
started.
shocking.
Yeah,
I was,
started.
I was so nervous.
He started you from the jump, and I was like, okay, damn, this is
Yeah.
this is. I mean, first time with the 99s. Just immediately, boom, had a starting position. I think we played left wing, and yeah, I remember you killed it that game. I remember, and I think from there you kind of just like earned the respect from the group.
Yeah, that was another big hurdle, similar to the Man City thing, that kind of like proved myself that I could do it, because I remember the first day we got there to the camp, we were playing small side. I was nervous. I was not playing that great.
Yeah.
And Hugo, I think Hugo gets a lot of slack in the U.S. soccer world and stuff. He was the best.
Gets a lot of stick or get a lot of slack?
Slack.
Stick. Gets a lot of stick. Yeah. Gets a lot of scrutiny.
Scrutiny. I'm not great with words. As but so he was.
Hugo Perez, Eric, was our under 14 coach. So he recently coached the national team of El Salvador. He was a legend with U.S. soccer. Do you know Hugo Perez? He wore the number 10. Like what year? This was like in the 19.
Before I was born.
This was a while ago.
Yeah, when he was around, I was super young. So
the
name, I recognize the name. I just
so he was our under 14s coach. With the 99s group. And so that's when he references Hugo. Fantastic coach. But yeah,
I thought he was phenomenal.
But
all the stuff that I see about him negative in this, that, the other. I had the complete opposite opinion of him. I wish he was there longer, because he was only there for that one camp that I went to.
Was he? And then
he was
left?
there before. That was his last camp. I'm pretty sure.
That was.
Maybe he had one or two more with you guys that I wasn't there or something. But that was the only camp that I had with him, and I loved him because he pulled me to the side right after that first day. And no national team coach does stuff like this.
Is going to do that, yeah.
He pulls me aside. He's like, dude, you're a phenomenal player. Like, I don't want to see you come here and be scared and do this, that, the other. Like, I brought you here because you can do things nobody else can do. He said, you have that talent. I want you to bring it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter to me. I want to see you try, be skillful, be creative, because that's who you are. And that was like the green light in my head that's like, okay, let me get back to who I am. And so he ended up starting me in that game, which was insane to me, because I hadn't done anything to deserve a start in that moment, other than the stuff that I've done with the 2000s. And I think I was like 13 at the time still. And we were playing the U18 LA Galaxy team that just won national championship.
Hugo was like,
this team is good for being 13.
He was like obsessed with us playing like 3-4 years old. He was like, I don't care what you do with kids your age. That does not matter to me. He was like, you're expected to destroy these kids.
It wasn't like we just played some local LA Galaxy.
I need to see you guys play against guys that are bigger than you, stronger than you, faster than you.
3 years older than the 99s and probably 4 years older.
I think that helped our group so much.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about in our group that we had like Tyler Adams came out of that group. We had Jonathan Gonzalez. We had, Nick Tattagui, unfortunately, not playing anymore. We had a solid group, and I think Hugo was like a huge key part of that.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you. I think he gets a lot of stick, and there was like rumors about why he was let go by U.S. Soccer. There was like there was things saying that because he would speak to us in Spanish on the sidelines. And apparently, I think what I've heard was that that didn't get along too well with U.S. Soccer, like the fact that he was speaking Spanish to some of the players, because maybe they were saying, "Oh, you're preferencing you're preferencing the Spanish-speaking players more. Like, you like them more, you're calling them more." And he would tell us, he was like, "Guys, if I speak to the Spanish," he would tell the whole group, like Americans, Hispanic, everyone. He's like, "If I speak to any players in Spanish, it's not because I like them more, I'm trying to speak to them more. I'm just telling them, I'm speaking to them in Spanish because I know that the opposite coach doesn't understand Spanish. And so I want to say this so that if I want to make tactical changes, the coach cannot understand what I'm trying to say." He's like, "Let me make that very clear when I say that. That's the reason why I'm doing that." And so, I mean, who knows why he was let go, but I
like it less whenever a coach talks to me. So I didn't know anything he was saying.
But I do remember that when he told us when we had our last day with the last camp that he had, when he told us that he was leaving, like our whole group was in tears, like all of us, like we were just like we loved this guy, like we fought for this guy, like. He was probably by far one of my best coaches.
Him and John Hackworth were the best two national team coaches I ever had, and I only had him again for that one camp.
Yeah.
But like what he did with me, where he pulled me to the side and gave me that confidence, was something that like you don't see that at the professional level almost at all. You get rare occasions, but like it's very rare in youth national team, especially because they want guys to kind of get thrown in and then swim, type of thing. And so for my first camp, I was not expecting that at all. First camp with the 99s, at least. That moved me a lot.
And then so you obviously transitioned into your group, right, with the 2000s and the 17s and Hack. And I know you mentioned like briefly, like you were like, man, I want to. There was a drive in you that wanted to be the best player in your group, because you had a strong roster. You had guys like Josh Sargent, Timothy Weah.
I think our roster,
Serginho
I think
Dest.
our age group for the World Cup, the U17,
Yeah.
how it's obviously every 2 years, I think we had the best, us and Landon Donovan's age group were probably, at the time, the two best age groups ever. And I wanted to be the best of that best age group.
And ultimately, you were. I would say you were the top prospect in that group. Like if you go back to 2017 World Cup and they watch that U.S. national team roster, and you have those names I told you, Josh Sargent, Timothy Weah, Serginho Dest, Chris Durkin, James Sands, all these guys. Everyone's thinking Andrew Carleton. This is the guy. Like this is the guy. If anyone's gonna,
I think you had guys like Timo, Josh, Chris Durkin, Chris Goslin. I think Goslin was a little not as much in this group that I'm about to speak of, but like you had really good players that were a really good striker and a really good winger and a really good center back or defensive
midfield, yeah.
But like America's never really had a great creative number 10, and that was my biggest dream, was that I was going to be the first really world class number 10. Christian's kind of became that, but he also kind of plays winger. But like he's unreal. Fast, speed, all of that stuff. That really wasn't as much my game.
Yeah.
But just creative, whatever. That's what like I loved, and that's what I thought I was great at, and I was obsessed with that dream of being the first American that had that Brazilian flair type of thing in them. And that's what I was obsessed with growing up.
Yeah.
But that team was insanely talented.
Did you hear that noise of like you being compared to Christian and people
I loved it. I didn't love it in the sense of like wow, that's cool that I'm compared to him. I loved the not competition, but like okay, Christian's a guy 2 years older than me in the older cycle. He's the best player.
Yeah.
I got to try to be better than him because again, my dream was always to be better and better and better because I was obsessed with soccer.
Yeah.
But like again, I don't say that in the thing of like I was a fanboy of like cool to be compared to Christian, even though it was. But I loved that competition because I'm like, all right, guys are looking at me. That means I'm doing something right to be compared in this conversation.
It was a motivator.
It was a motivator. Yeah. I mean, I think anybody enjoys, a little pat on the back saying you're doing a good job type of thing, and that's kind of what a lot of the noise felt like to me. Is it was confirmation that I was playing well and doing good and continuing to get better and better and better.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because after the World Cup, while we were in India for our World Cup was whenever the U.S. got knocked out of qualifiers for the World Cup?
When they lost to Trinidad.
When
they weren't able to qualify.
That was the 2000.
That was 2018
to get into
World Cup.
2018.
Yeah. And so it's funny because even John Hackworth sat us down that next day and was like, in a little depression talk about the U.S. team not making it, but he's like, this is a great opportunity for you guys getting to that age where I'm sure a lot of these older guys are getting pushed out.
Yeah.
And this is a great opportunity for you. And I'm looking around like, oh, yeah, we could have a good World Cup, get into Atlanta United, and then maybe go to the January camp or something like that in the next couple years.
When they call MLS guys and stuff like that,
Because I didn't know to what extent they were just going to push guys out and start a whole new cycle. So, like, a couple of us were looking around like, we got a shot in the next year or two to get into the men's team. And if you can get into the men's team at a young age, like, that opens so many doors into Europe. And so that was a cool thing that kind of gave me a little motivation. I remember the U20 World Cup was right before our World Cup, and I to this day looking back I didn't understand it at the time, but I wanted to get into the 20s World Cup was one thing that I was kind of like pushing for. Now this is back with the like 97 cycle. You remember where Josh Sargent got called into that?
Oh, he did go to that World Cup.
And that was
it Lagos? Didn't Lagos go to that World Cup? Lagos went to that World Cup, which is crazy.
Yeah, and Lagos was good back then. But he like had fell off like as far as like the conversation circle with all that stuff. I felt like with national team stuff, he wasn't going to a few camps, and then all of a sudden went to a camp right before the World Cup and then balled out. And
I think Tab had a history of that, of like just like getting in, like just a curveball of like just getting someone and
I was pumped for Lagos because
again
he was he did score, but he was kind of at that weird kind of point where like he needed
a platform something to get
to help him out.
Yeah.
And so that call up was huge for him, and that kind of I don't know if he was signed with Atlanta at the time. I think he was. But I can't really remember. I think that helped him get a homegrown contract in Atlanta, which was huge because I didn't know him super well back then, but I didn't know which direction he was really going. I always heard Lagos because he was a couple years older than me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
The 2017 season ends. Do they like sit down with you and kind of have a talk with you, like a debrief of the season and like their plans? And stuff
After
like
your
that?
World Cup, after
Yeah.
your strong
After
World
all
Cup,
that
your
goes
strong
on.
World Cup.
Yeah, not to the extent that it was any memorable. I can't really remember it. I
If it
don't really
was,
think so.
it wasn't
Yeah,
like
if
a
it
sit
was, it
down
wasn't
type of
like
thing.
a hey, so this is where I think things went according to plan this season, and this is where it's not, and this is kind of our thoughts for the next season.
Did Data have end of the year meetings with players?
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
But maybe only with certain players. But was it something
a lot
like
of
he
the
had
times though with the American guys, Carlos would be in there as well.
Oh, okay.
Because Carlos was the translate.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to think, I don't remember it. If there was, it wasn't anything meaningful more than just like good World Cup and good job. We'll see you next season.
Yeah.
Which was fine. I just had a good World Cup. I was happy with how things had ended because again, I wasn't really in this like, oh crap, like this is not going according to plan thing because I just had a great World Cup. So I'm like, all right, team's got to be looking. Now next season, I just got to come in. I got no national team stuff. Let me just focus on.
After that 2017 World Cup, did Atlanta or your agent or anyone discuss with you like, hey, these teams like really enjoyed your World Cup?
The Barcelona scout came up and gave his thing to
your agent
and said, call me as soon as the tournament's done.
Did your agent call him?
Yeah, and so again, it wasn't like. And this is kind of jumping ahead a little bit in the story. It wasn't like there was just nobody that was interested once I signed with Atlanta.
Yeah.
They just put the price tag at like $4 million.
Atlanta did.
Yeah, and no club is going to pay $4 million for a kid who hasn't broken into an MLS team yet.
Yeah.
Now, if I had played 20, 25, 30 games, somebody would pay $4 million. But like they just put the price tag way too high to where no team was willing to do that yet.
Yeah. Did you know what that price tag was when you signed your first contract with Atlanta?
Oh, no. This is I didn't know that at all.
Was it in your contract? Or
no. I'm not saying there was like a release clause.
Okay.
Yeah,
no,
it's just from my agent. They had said
Atlanta
at the
was
time
saying,
they were saying, we're going to need $4 million before we even consider.
I think the idea is if you want him before we can even have a chance to really try to
you're gonna have to give us like you're gonna have to give us something that we're gonna.
Yeah, I mean their thing is that we can.
The idea that happens makes sense.
Yeah,
at least in my opinion.
If the clubs were probably willing to pay $1.5 maybe million and take a shot kind of at me without being proven, but it's like Atlanta United's gonna look at it like we could rather get $1 million right now. Or hopefully things go well, and in a year or two we could get $8 million.
Yeah.
Why would we? And it's going to help our team because hopefully he's good.
He's good and he contributes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they hadn't really got to that part where they were comfortable taking that $1 million thing yet.
You hadn't really done anything at that point. You hadn't really done anything.
No,
for
just
Atlanta
youth
United.
level.
Besides that World Cup. Yeah. How far did you guys go in that World Cup again? You guys made it to
quarterfinal.
The
lost to the
quarterfinals?
team that won.
Who did you guys lose to again?
England.
Oh, you guys played against England.
Yeah, we messed up in our group. We won our first game against India, beat Ghana, which was one of the hardest teams in the tournament. And
those African teams for the youth.
They were so athletic, dude. That was one of the toughest games
I think that was where Osimhen like blew up.
I remember I had to dribble this guy 3 times because he kept catching up. I would dribble him, I'd drop his shoulder, come this way, and 2 seconds later he was right here. I couldn't get out of like this corner. But they were good, and we won 1-0 somehow, I think. I think Ayo scored. And then we played Colombia. I thought we were good and whatever, and laid an egg, and they beat us 3-1. And so somehow we went from first to third in our group, which gets you a qualification because we had 6 points, and some third-place teams go through. But then we get drawn against Paraguay, who have walked through their group and came, I think they lost to Brazil in the final of South American qualifying, so they're really good.
Yeah.
And they walked through their group against Mali and a couple other teams that were good.
Yeah.
And so we're like, dang, we might be out in the round of 16.
We're
we have
going
dreams
out
trying
bad.
to win this thing.
Yeah.
And we're like, dang, things have turned quick. The mood is not good. And so we go into this game, and for the first 15 minutes of the game, we are getting pummeled worse than we had ever gotten pummeled ever. Like in our whole cycle, this Paraguay team has hit the crossbar, they've hit the post. Justin saved it off the line. I'm looking around like, bro, I don't even know if I've touched the ball in the first 15 minutes. All of a sudden, a ball goes up to Josh. He lays it off to me. I hit a one-time volley, little back spinny ball, through to Ayo on the far side, who crosses it in, and Tim scores, and it's 1-0, and somehow we're up 1-0.
He was like, how do we even get
from then on? It was the complete. We popped them so hard. It was the funnest game. That was the best game of my life. was this game. We beat them 5-0 somehow.
Jeez.
They never came out of their half the rest of the game. It was
after the first
goal.
Flying.
Yeah, they were flying. And I don't know if we were just playing bad or if they were just unreal good those first 15 minutes. You know how those South American teams come out hot the first handful of minutes?
Yeah.
But anyway, we went up 1-0. I think we made it 2-0 at halftime. I had a goal, 2 assists. And then had like the hockey assist, so like how I played that through ball to
So you're involved in 4.
I was involved in 5 of the goals.
Five goals.
So this is a weird thing that like it'll sound like I'm kind of self-centered. I bet I don't really care because I think this is a good thought that goes through my head a lot.
Yeah.
So up until this game, Tim Weah wasn't really talked about huge, other than just he wasn't a starter on our team because I was playing left wing until right before the World Cup, and so I was starting over Tim, and then him and Io would fight over the right wing spot. Yeah. And so George number 10.
George
was the number 10. Yeah. And so Timo started to play well. So we were like, and George wasn't playing great right before the World Cup. And so we kind of as a team had the idea of moving me to the 10 so we can get Timo on the field. So we have Timo and Io on the wing.
Yeah.
So anyway, I go to the 10. That's kind of the start of me playing 10, at least with the national team and stuff. And so anyway, Tim then starts in the World Cup. He has this game against Paraguay. I have the game of my life, obviously, with a goal, 2 assists, 2 hockey assists involved in everything.
In every goal.
And I'm like, after that game, I'm like, this is the time where the Barca scout comes up and gives his stuff to my agent. And I'm like, okay, this is the jump start. And then, but Timo scored a hat trick, and he's George Weah's son. So like everything is about, Tim Weah, hat trick. Scores a sick goal, has a couple tap-ins, and then a sick banger, which is great because, like, I'm not trying to, like, talk down against Timo on this because he had a phenomenal game.
Yeah.
But I think that went undercover of how good of a game I played. And I've even seen a couple, like, people on Twitter and stuff talk because I see what people say. And they're like, it's funny, like, a couple of, like, the big U.S. accounts that follow
the fan pages,
that a couple of them have even said, like, commenting back on that game, because people will post Tim Weah's goal. Like, remember when Tim Weah did this? And they're like, it's funny how Tim got, like, all the notoriety from this game. However, Andrew Carleton played the best game I've ever seen from a youth national team player.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, like, that was one thing that I felt was, like, it's just bad luck that you think back of, like, oh, what could have been different if maybe he only scored 2 and didn't get the hat trick thing.
Yeah. That would have been the
that just, like, you think of, like, little tiny things like that probably changed the trajectory of your career slightly.
Yeah.
But that slight little change could mean a whole lot.
Where was Tim playing at the time?
He was at PSG.
He's at PSG Academy?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that, like, that World Cup kind of helped him push into starting training with the first team and stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, it didn't change his stuff much because he was already there at PSG.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, for me, it could change my, like, trajectory a lot.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not trying to say selfish or sound selfish about this, but, like, that's things that I sit here and think about now that I'm done playing.
Yeah, definitely. And then you guys go against England in the quarterfinals.
Yeah. Chris Goslin, that was a huge hurt. He got his second yellow of the tournament against Paraguay. That was the only negative that came out of that game. And
was it stupid second yellow? Was it like a?
Yeah, he'll say it's stupid.
So he knew in the game like not to get a yellow card.
Yeah, but Serginho, he missed a press, and so his guy got out. And then Chris was 1v1 in, like, middle of space against this guy.
And Chris isn't very, like, he's not very...
He's good this way, but this way not so much. But so the guy kind of got around him, and he had no choice but to drag him down because they were on a lightning counterattack.
Well, what was the score of the game? What was the score?
I think it was only 0-0 or 1-0.
Oh, okay. So he had to make the foul. He had to make the foul.
Early in the game.
I was thinking 5-0. You make
it was at most 1-0 at that time.
So you lost Chris into the quarterfinals.
Yeah, which Chris was a huge part of our team. And everything that I talk about today has also basically happened to him. Like, he was as good of a prospect basically as I was growing up. And he had a phenomenal World Cup as well.
He did, yeah. He scored a goal, didn't he? Did he score a banger, or was that in the?
No, I hit the crossbar.
Oh, hit the crossbar.
In the same Paraguay game.
That was a Paraguay game.
Bro, that was a crazy story too, because he puts the ball up and he's like 3 yards from the half field circle.
He was far out.
And everybody kind of looks around like, I don't really know what to do right now, because we're all kind of tired because like 35th, 40th minute right before half.
Knowing Chris, he's just like, F him.
Yeah, and nobody really moved around to get the ball, and Chris was just like, all right, screw it, I'm gonna hit it. And he hits it, and we're all completely okay with it going out of bounds because we just got 25 seconds of
Everyone's
rest.
expecting it just to like.
And he hits it, and we're like, holy shit. dings the bar, and I'm like, oh my god.
But that's like another thing that we're talking about, like a what if, like
That's
what if
what I'm
that would
saying.
hit? Like what if that would hit?
And that's what like I want to. Like, every player sits there and thinks about these little things that happen individually to them that nobody else will think about but them. So, like, I'm not trying to say it in a selfish way, because I'm sure Chris sits there and is like, dude, if I would have scored that would have been ringing around all the social media everywhere, and people would have been like, who is this guy? And then they watch him play. You know, like, you never know what's going to change your career, because those little tiny things make a huge difference.
Yeah.
But
that's crazy. We want to get Chris onto it as well. I've spoken to him about it.
Onto the podcast?
Yeah, I want to get Chris on it, because his is a little bit different situation, you know, because Andrew, I feel like you were in the limelight, and Chris was there, right? But I feel like, I don't know, maybe Eric, you would know a little bit better.
So we looked, you were obviously like the shining prospect that we were all just waiting for something to happen with. And then Chris Gosselin was like right under. It was like 1A and 1B.
Yeah.
And we were just kind of waiting for things to just kind of pan out, and it was just a matter of time in our minds. At least the people who were covering the team, the people that were, like the people that were in the know.
Yeah.
And it just, for whatever reason, just never panned out. There was one rumor at one point that, well, I guess the what am I trying to say? Not so much rumor, but it had been kind of started circulating around that maybe the interest in soccer wasn't there for you guys anymore. Specifically, I think Chris Gosselin was like he wanted to start like a clothing brand or something like that.
Yeah.
We had heard stuff like that, and we thought maybe they're just losing interest in the game. Maybe it's just because it's not panning out for them or whatever. We heard a lot of that stuff, and that's kind of when and I can't remember exactly when that happened. I want to say it was early 2018, but. It was the entire time we were all just kind of waiting for
to kind of touch on that a little bit. It was into 2018, the second year of Atlanta United, where like a lot of the I guess rumors of X, Y, and Z started to happen, because both me and him were starting to get really frustrated. Yeah. Because me and Chris were best friends, like spent more time together than we did with our families from the time we were 13 until 18, 19. I mean, we lived together. We were best friends. Yeah. We went if we were going to get lunch, I was going with lunch to get with Chris. If Chris wanted to go get a T-shirt, I was going with Chris to go get a T-shirt. We did everything together, and it was nice because you had somebody that was also feeling the same pressure, the same responsibility, the same frustrations that you were also feeling. You
could bounce stuff off each other.
Yeah, but I also think that started to become a negative, because whenever you just toss negativity back and forth, you kind of like we were both going through it, and so we were able to cope together with each other, but in a negative way, because we could just talk crap and say negative stuff over and over to each other, which I think ended up, whenever you just talk negative all day, that starts going through your head. Yeah. But so, Chris didn't love soccer the way that I did, and he had always been that way. Like, he was more of the natural talent. He also worked insanely hard, but he was a lot more natural talented than me.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what they expected from Chris, because they screwed Chris from the moment he put on an Atlanta United shirt. How you signed, and how quickly did Chris sign after? A couple months later.
Oh, a couple months later.
Yeah. But like, Atlanta hadn't even started training yet. Yeah. So he was there from the first day.
From just like you.
Yeah, but I don't know if they just, I don't know why you sign a 15, 16-year-old kid who's one of the best prospects in the country, and from day one seemed to have zero interest in him. Yeah. His was worse than mine in the sense of like, I at least had some opportunity.
How would you explain that they had no interest in him? Or what does that mean?
Yeah, from the first preseason. I mean, like, in preseason, you'll have close to 30 guys in a preseason, because you got some trial guys, some college guys that dropped down with second team. Now, we didn't have second team first year, so we just had more guys training with us almost every day. But he was always put with a third group. You can tell within a training sessions and stuff, and as you play at a club, like, who the coach likes, or who, like, the club takes care of and helps out and whatever, and I can't think of maybe they would disagree. I don't know what really went on or happened, but like, from the first preseasons and camps, he was always with the academy guys that were up with us, and he was tossed to the side over here. And then national team, he would do great, and that was kind of his like as we were talking about
Safe
earlier,
haven,
escape.
yeah.
But like, and I think first year you can always cross out the negative things that you were feeling because you had this national team stuff to go get away to.
And it's the first year. You knew
yes,
that you were,
yes,
all,
of course. And so he just, I don't think he was ever really given an opportunity. I don't think now Chris, like, we're best friends, so like I can feel like I can talk about this with him. And Juan, you know this as well. He's never had like the greatest attitude in the world, you know. Like he's always he's always to himself and kind of like he's lackadaisical the way he looks. But like whenever you know Chris, that's just how he is.
Yeah.
And so I think that comes off and rubs people the wrong way sometimes.
I think it's a Jamaican thing too.
Yeah. I think that's just how the Caribbean kind of goes through blah, 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 whatever. And some coaches don't mind it at all. But I think it rubs some people the wrong way, and I think
in terms
that's
of like
he's
not showing enough effort.
Yeah, he doesn't really care, and that's why I think rumors like that start spreading. Where like, now I think we were talking about probably doing a clothing line. Someone that sounds like some dumb weird. But like,
I don't even know where I heard that from.
Yeah, but it's like
that's one thing that stuck out though.
Yeah. But say he wants to start a clothing line, why does that matter?
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
But it's just like because he's lethargic and because he kind of like comes off the wrong way and rubs people. Then all of a sudden. Now he wants to start a clothing line. Oh, maybe doesn't look like he wants to do this because he wants to go do this other thing, you know? Yeah. And that's where, like, I think rumors start spreading and then it kind of gets blown out of proportion. But I just think that's how Chris is. You can ask any national team coach. They all would say the same exact thing that I just said. That's just how he is.
Yeah.
Whereas I think I have a good way of seeming really locked in and paying attention, whatever. And I can have all this other stuff going on in my life where, like, I'm pissed at what's going on here. But at least seem like I'm engaged and try and work hard and whatever. Yeah. Whereas Chris is going to be Chris no matter how happy or how sad he is. Yeah. He's going to be the exact same.
Yeah.
Was the training ground stuff was the not showing interest? And you don't really have to speak for Chris here, but just generally speaking, was that more like a Tata thing? Was that a Darren thing? Was that a Boca thing? Like where did that come from, or where did that feeling stem from? Who was like the culprit, if you will?
As far as
who
was saying that it looks like they're not working hard or whatever.
Well, or just generally speaking, like who is making those decisions, or who is kind of putting that perception out there.
Tata picked the team; he's the one making the decisions. But I kind of know now there's a huge push coming from above Tata on people like me and Chris's situation because. After speaking with people about it, after kind of times go by and whatnot, you kind of learn that Tata didn't make a lot of the decisions involved in my case.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to going to national team camps, Tata had no say in that. When it comes to some Open Cup games where I could play or not play, Tata didn't really make those decisions.
That's so strange.
And I can kind of verify that because you've probably heard a ton of the rumors of like the reason Tata loved it in Atlanta. The reason why he left is because him and Carlos and Darren couldn't get along because Darren and Carlos kept wanting to pick teams and do this and do that. And so, like, they didn't do that with everybody, don't get me wrong, but, like, I'm pretty sure Tata, I don't know the full story, don't get me wrong, but, like, I can kind of verify it by people who have said Tata left because he didn't like working with Carlos and Darren.
He did say that. I don't remember specifically what he said or in what outlet or whatever he said it to. But I remember that being a thing that he just like it was clear that he didn't want to be here because of the whole he was getting not pushed out, but he was just like, I'm done with with Boca, and it was specifically Carlos. So I don't know if that situation was the same with Darren or anything like that, but it was specifically Carlos that he was having those issues with. I don't remember if he said specifically about picking lineup stuff, but
I'm not saying that that's exactly
if I'm Tata Martino and you want me to put up with this? No thanks.
Correct. Like, and I'm not saying like Carlos walked into his locker room and said, "Here's the 11 for kids." You know, I think he's in there saying like, "Yo, like I don't like what this kid's doing, and so you shouldn't play him."
Yeah.
Is he trying to like Billy Bean the whole situation?
My theory is kind of first year we had Almiron. Yeah. Second year we signed Barco. Third year we signed Pitti. Consistently spending big money on a position that I play, there or left wing. You have Tito Villalba. You have Yamil Assad. You got a bunch of guys that you're spending a lot of money on in that position. I think Carlos was happy continuing to try to spend that money and wanted an excuse not to play me. because I was young and free, and the fans wanted to see me in there a lot. And I think he had other plans from other motivations from other stuff to play some of these other guys. And so I think he's going in there coming up with excuses on why, like, Andrew has to go to this national team camp and he can't really play in this game, and we don't really want to push him because he's young and he's not ready for all of this. And so the way that I kind of back that up is there's been a few occasions with stuff that didn't happen nearly the way that, like, the story has come out about me, and they just let that fly, and they never let me sit down and explain. If I got in trouble, sure, I did a lot of dumb stuff. I'm not saying that. But, like, again, going back to, if you care about this player, you will protect a lot of the stuff from getting out there. And if stuff does get out there, you're going to make sure the story is exactly how the story goes, or maybe a little less as bad as what it was.
Well, let me ask you, because, and we'll get to all that.
Yeah.
I'm curious because Miles Robinson, while not the same sort of developmental background as you, kind of got that same first-year treatment. George Bello, I forgot his backstory, but I think he had the same similar situation. Did you see the, like, comparable things to that, like, with what was going on with them, or because, I mean, the second Miles Robinson got onto the starting 11, he was amazing.
But with Tata, he didn't have the time of day, right?
No.
Well, I'm curious if you saw the same sort of things with, like, just all the young players, or was it just?
I think every situation's a little bit different. I think George got in there pretty quick. George was sitting there. He wasn't around first year to my. I don't think so. Maybe he was first year. I can't really remember. But he didn't sit around. He kind of slowly graduated his way in, which is what every young player looks for. I'm not looking to go from nothing to playing every single minute.
Yeah.
But, like, he had a continuous path into the team, whereas I went here and back and here and back and here and back, one forward, one back, one forward, one back, one forward. And I just, it
Couldn't
drove
get
me
momentum.
crazy
Couldn't get
because every
momentum.
time, like, I felt like I was getting there,
Yeah.
You got dropped back down.
I was back down and had to work all the way up. But, like, Miles is a similar kind of situation, even though his was more kind of that 0 to nothing or 0 to 100.
Yeah.
But I think in Miles' situation, he benefited a lot from a year. It's like a quarterback is the way I would explain it. The quarterback that can sit behind, like, Aaron Rodgers, can sit behind Brett Favre for a year or two.
He sat behind LGP and Michael Parker's.
I think he learned a ton from that because Miles is amazing now, but any player that you asked about Miles, I don't think he was ready whenever he first came out of college, and I think he benefited a ton from those 2 years, and he's the player he is now because of those couple years. Because athletically, defensive-wise, he was always insanely good, but he wasn't as good playing with the ball as he is now, but learned a lot those first couple years. I think Michael Parker's was a huge factor in that. Because Parker's is really good with the ball as a center back. I think that helped him a lot. So I think everybody's situation's a little bit different. Now,
I guess the curiosity is whether at the time there was a dedication to development in the young players that they did have versus let's just bring in these young South American players and try to, strike lightning in a bottle
my
type
thought
of situation.
process was and the Barco situation was what got me a lot. And I always got along well with Barco whenever he was here. I don't have anything negative to say about him. But the way that I looked at it whenever we signed him, because he was 1 year older than me.
When did they sign him, in 2018?
Yes.
Okay.
Right after the first year going into the second year. Was why would I want to go spend $15 million or whatever the transfer fee, $20 million, whatever it was, on one of the best number 10 young players from Argentina whenever I have one of the best young American number 10s right here waiting to get in.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be a huge year for me going into 2018, and I just felt like, okay, if you go sign a 24 or 25-year-old that's proven himself, that's whatever, and maybe you say he's played at River Plate, so he's kind of proven himself, but, like, that only proved my point of, like, he's at my age playing at River Plate, which is way more pressure and way more whatever than Atlanta United. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around, like, why we would go sign somebody that's the exact same basically player as me.
Yeah.
It just felt like I hadn't done anything wrong, and it's clear that they don't really want me. That's how it felt.
Yeah. Was it like a punch in the gut?
Yeah,
like
that was a
saw
huge
that?
punch in the gut.
Yeah.
Especially
you're
whenever,
going into 2018 thinking like,
this is supposed
coming
to be
off a really strong
exactly,
2017 World Cup. 2018, you're like, man, this is gonna be my year.
And
I'm
you
gonna have a strong
got
preseason.
Tito, Yamil, and Almiron. That's your starting lineup, and then like I'm right behind them.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's injuries, stuff like that happens. I'm gonna play a lot this year because I've definitely now beat out the couple guys I were fighting for in the bench spot.
Yeah.
So like I'll be the first attacking one on, and then we sign this guy, and it's in I think one or two other players to some degree.
But he was the big signing.
Yeah, but he was the big signing. Where now there's 4 or 5 guys that I gotta that I have no chance of beating out because they make a bunch more money. The guys with money always play, but it's like, how am I supposed to beat out these guys? Who I'm not talking crap about Barco because Barco's an amazing player, but it just felt like, all right, Andrew's gonna slide over this way and play here with the second team and some other stuff, which was not my dream at all.
Yeah.
And not what I felt like I had deserved, because up to that point I was playing at every level I'd played as good as anybody else out there. So it's like I was ready for 2018 to be the breakout year.
Yeah.
And
I think at the same time, Tata didn't actually want him either, if I remember correctly.
Again,
or maybe not want him.
So
Tata was not requesting him, or was not looking for him.
This was a 100% a Carlos and Darren decision to sign Barco. But to give you some idea into that Tata perspective, to go back with the Tata Carlos kind of debacle, is one of the stories where I can kind of try to verify that conspiracy, if you want to say.
That they didn't like each other very much?
Yeah, that Carlos also had a say in some of the things that went in my life. Is one of the first games of the season in 2018, we're playing New York City FC at home. And I'd had a phenomenal preseason, really good, competing against, the Titos and even Barco, trying to go toe-to-toe with him to earn some time and some play and whatever. And Almiron's hurt. So that starting number 10 spot is open right now. Mm-hmm. And Barco had been playing winger, but he could also maybe go inside, or me or Tito maybe were debating about who was going to start. That's how far up into the roster I had moved.
Yep.
So that week before we all knew Miggy was out, on Monday and Tuesday, you knew the lineup with Tata on Monday.
Wow. That early in the week?
Yeah, it was Monday or Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
He didn't say this is the lineup, but
you could tell in training.
Knew.
Yeah.
And so he comes up to me because he knows this is about to be my first MLS start. He says, "Look, I need you to be ready. You're playing this weekend."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Heck yeah, dude! This whole last year, there's some frustrations and whatever, but this is it. Yeah. This is my game, going up to the next level." And that was the best week of training I had ever had. I was playing so good. It just felt like all the stars were aligning. This is the week I'm about to go out there and play great. I'm going to prove that I can do it. And then from here on out, I'm just going to be playing and playing and playing. And so all week in training, I'm playing great, obviously, as I had said. Not obviously, that sounds bad. But I was playing.
You said, yeah.
But so I get there on Friday. We're doing set pieces. And Tata goes and hands out the bibs and
to the starting 11.
Yeah. And he walks right past me. And I'm like, frack. And so again, I'm not super upset about it because I'm like, okay, well, I'll be one of the first ones off the bench. I've been the starters all week, so I've got to be up there in the pecking order.
Of course, yeah.
I'm going to be getting in this game. Well, Saturday comes around. We always did a thing. I don't know if you guys did this at New York City, where you have 19 guys on a game day roster.
Yeah.
To where if somebody gets hurt in the warm up, even though there's only 18 allowed to be rostered, if somebody gets hurt in the warm up, you can rotate him in.
Yeah.
So we always had 19 guys. We show up. Our 19
that was the worst
guys
feeling if you're the 19 because you just warm up with the team and then
I found that out the first ever Atlanta United game. I was number 19. I didn't even know that existed.
That is
we're
the
at the
worst
table
feeling in the world.
To go into this story before I finish that one, we're at the table at the hotel that we were staying in before the first ever game at Bobby Dodd. And we're there, and I'm so pumped. This is the craziest thing in my life right here. And so we're all at the table, and I think it was Chris McCann goes, "All right, mate, so who do you think number 19 is going to be?" And I'm looking around what are you talking about?
19,
what does 19 mean? I know we got the 17s, that's Atlanta United's thing, but I don't know who the 19 is. And he's like, "Yeah, mate, there's one player that goes for if anybody gets hurt in the warm up." And so I'm looking around and I'm like,
you start doing the math.
I'm like, there's only one possible person that can be other than me, and my heart sinks. It's like me and Andrew Wheeler or somebody like that, and we're both looking at each other we know it's one of the two of us. And so I show up there, and so to get to the Bobby Dodd Stadium, they didn't really know how it was going to work and how long it was going to take because it was our first time getting to the stadium. They didn't know about the traffic. So we got there like 2.5 hours before kickoff.
So you're just sitting there waiting.
And Tata comes up to me like 2 minutes after we get there and is like, yeah, man, stands. And I'm like,
wait, did he say to you English or Spanish?
He said it. He spoke like this to me in Spanish. And then translator had
then said,
So I'm sitting there for 2 hours before we even go out to warm up. Like, you've got to be freaking kidding me, dude.
Heart just dropped in that moment.
And it's like, it's not really a huge deal because I probably wouldn't have played if I was on the bench anyway. But I thought it'd be the coolest thing ever for the first Atlanta United game. Like, be just a kid from Georgia, just to be there, just sit on the bench. I would have been happy as could be sitting on that bench, just blah blah blah. But I got to go warm up, and like that was cool.
I swear, I think about that so many times, and I think there's got to be something that goes through a coach's head and be like, I can put Andrew Carlos on the bench, first homegrown player. Yeah. Or I could put this other, who said Andrew Wheeler, you know.
I can't remember who it was.
Okay, maybe let's just say, for example, it was him.
Yeah.
I'm sure a good player. Deserves to be an I-9 player, you know. But, like, you know, fringe player, whatever. There's got to be something that goes through the coach's head to be like, you know what? They put Andrew on the bench.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be good for the city. Good for the,
like, you got to do what's best for the team, but every coach knows. But whoever the last guy is to make the bench,
does it really matter?
They know, unless it's a 1 in a million situation, we all know that guy's not playing anyway.
And I just feel like you
especially back then because there was only 3 subs. That's a key thing.
So
now you got 5 or 6 to where like now it's a little bit more okay. Like it makes sense. Back then there was 3 subs
too. Yeah.
Every game that I was on the bench for, not every game, but like there were many games I knew I wasn't playing even though I was on the bench, and like other guys knew I'm on the bench, but I know I'm not playing because I'm like the 7th guy on the bench.
Now it's a different story.
Huh?
Now it's a different story.
Yeah, exactly. With those subs, it's a lot different. But anyway, so back to that New York City story. So again, I show up to the game and there's a 19-man roster, and I was in the starting 11 all week playing great. And I get there and Tata comes up to me, and as soon as I see him coming up, I know what he's coming over to say, and I'm like, there's no getting away that he's coming to tell me I'm the 19th guy. He's like, yeah, man, you're 19th guy today. So just go to the warm up and head up to the suite. And that was the first time I really started to lose my head because I'm like, there's no way he just made this decision. Yeah. Like, this is not Tata making that decision because he's seen me. He told me I was starting at the beginning of the week.
He gave you a verbal.
Yeah, he told me I was starting at the beginning of the week. And now if I played bad during training, okay, like if some young kid's not playing good in training on his first start, I get it. I was having the best week I've ever had. And so there wasn't anything that said, like, again, if he just moved me to the bench, maybe he changed strategy game plan a little bit, but he didn't. I went from starter
wasn't even in the roster completely
to off the roster.
Yeah.
And so again, I thought maybe somebody would come and say something like, hey, like we had to change this and like don't worry about it, blah blah blah.
Yeah, give you something.
Nothing. Carlos didn't say anything. Rest of the team,
that,
even the teammates though were asking what happened.
Like because something that happens, everyone in the team's like,
everybody knows.
Yeah, like hey Andrew, like what happened? Like what did they tell you? And you're just like, I don't know.
Is that something you can like ask the questions like, hey, what
Yeah, I mean you could go in and talk to, but like I don't think as a 17-year-old you really want to be going like asking.
I keep forgetting how young you were.
Yeah, but like I did it later down the road in this story, but like not after the first real big whatever. You're just like, you got to be kidding me. And you just
I guess
carry on.
So are you saying that
makes sense.
Are you saying that you think that was a decision from up above to be like take Andrew off the roster?
Yes, 100%.
And you think that was Carlos because there was no.
There's no way it was Tata.
There's no lead up. There's no explanation. There's no. In your mind, there's no rational.
Yeah, so unless it was Arthur Blank, I don't know who else.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I couldn't think that it could have been Tata because if Tata's running the training sessions, he has you in the 11, you're training well, and then it comes to game time, he just pulls you out. It would be Tata if like you're in the starting 11 training sessions, you play horrible, and then you're just out of the roster in the training sessions. You see that, okay, maybe it was a decision.
You would never, you know how a roster works. Like you're never going to go from a starter to off the roster because of a bad week of training, no matter almost how bad it is. But I just always assumed that was Carlos, and that was kind of the moment and again, I shouldn't say that. Looking back on it, that's the moment I started to realize I don't think Tata really had, because I was mad at Tata because I didn't know anything at that time. But looking back on it, I don't think it's Tata's fault. I think Tata really liked me. I think it was some people up above making a lot of decisions that he didn't make, which led to him wanting to leave. Not only my situation, but I'm sure if there's stuff going on with me, there's stuff going on with other people as well.
Yeah. That's interesting. So
we definitely heard that on our side, that it was that Tata was just like, I think I'm done with the sentiment was that I'm just done with Carlos.
Yeah, I mean, Tata has had a phenomenal coaching career, so why would he want to listen to somebody else that he's coming over to
Especially someone like
MLS?
Tata
He's going
Martino,
from Barcelona to Atlanta United. He's not going to want to listen to
was that his next job from when he got
he went from Barcelona to Argentina.
Yeah.
Oh,
got let go from Argentina, and then that's when Atlanta United picked him up.
Yeah. He did coach Barcelona, which is crazy, but it was just
a year.
I think it was like rumor that Messi like kind of just pushed for him to get that. Yeah, that was when Barcelona was at down bad.
Yeah, that was bad.
Barcelona was a bad year.
I don't know why. I mean,
so take us through the rest of that 2018. So obviously this is happening, but then you still get opportunities. You know, you had the Open Cup opportunity. You had your first star, you had the assist. So you recover, right? So take us through your mindset. So then, after this, you're recovering.
Yeah. So then after that, I still just really go back to the bench right after that, or in and off the bench, not rostered. And then we get the Open Cup game, and I played really well against Charleston. We played them again the next year.
Yeah.
From one earlier, but I score a goal over there at Kennesaw State. Play well.
That was your first Atlanta United goal?
Yeah, that was my first Atlanta United goal, I think. And then you play some second team games here and there. And then, so somewhere in the story, I'm going to tell this story first, actually. So, anyway, the Barco and Brandon situation happens.
Can we dig into that? Or do you want to talk about, like,
I mean,
can I ask? I just want to know what
to say anything.
What as this is all going on, I guess the question I ask is, what is going on in the locker room as that's kind of all unfolding? Or how do players react to stuff like that? Maybe use this as an example.
It turns into like girl gossip, where it's like, and like nobody's really like, that was the weirdest locker room I ever walked into. Like on that day, where like news had started to spread about what all had happened. I'm not going to go into detail about it because it's not my story to tell. But anyway, so that happens, and so I'm looking around like, all right, these are two guys that are in my position. So I'm thinking, all right, this is a little bit of an opportunity now, because Barco goes back to Argentina for a few days. I'm thinking he might be gone for a while. So
they send him back home.
Yeah. And then Brandon, he has personal stuff going on. So anyway, I get to start this game. So like, again, I'm not a fan of what had happened in like its crappy situation.
But it was to your benefit.
But it was to my benefit. This is the one little stroke of luck that now all of a sudden tide's starting to turn my way a little bit. So we were playing DC United against Wayne Rooney, Lucho Acosta, sick team. Now, they weren't as good, but like they had sick players.
Yeah.
And so I played that game. First ever start in MLS. Played really good, I thought. I had a couple dumb plays, but like that was a regular game for me. I had dumb plays all the time. But like I had that little chip. The only freaking goal Josef missed all year was 2 minutes into that DC United game. I go down the left side, and as I'm falling out of bounds, chip a ball to the back post. And Josef has a wide open header from the 6 and misses it wide. And that was the only goal he missed all year. That was the year he broke the record. I'm like, dude, you can score from everywhere, but the one time I cross you the ball, we miss. But he made up for it later that game because I had cut Lucho Acosta off a corner and then crossed it in, and he scored the game-winning goal. And it took a little skim off of somebody's head, so it didn't go down as an assist. I was so heated about that.
Really?
So, like,
they didn't count that
I crossed it in,
in,
and one of the DC guys jumped up, and it skimmed off like his hair, and Josef headed it in. Like, didn't change the trajectory of the ball at all, but just skimmed his head a tiny bit.
Like the goal,
so
like the goal Ronaldo scored in the World Cup where he like flicked it with his
head. Yes, like that.
You remember that goal? I mean, Ronaldo trying to claim it. Everyone's like,
and it did count as an assist for me. I was heated, but like I didn't really care because I was hyped because I played great, and I'm like, yes, this is showed I can do it. This is all I've been waiting for, is an opportunity to show that I can do it.
Yeah.
And now I have on the big stage. Now I'm going to play. 10 weeks go by. I haven't even seen a minute after that.
After that start?
Jeez.
10 games go by. There's not. Finally, by like the 8th game, I go in there and I'm like, yo, like, what am I doing wrong?
You had a start and you had
a start and had an assist.
Pretty much an assist. Didn't count an assist, but pretty much an assist. And then for 10 weeks, you don't see the field.
1 minute.
You're just with the second team.
Yeah, I played a couple games with the second team and on the bench for the. I'm on the bench, but like, there's no further minute.
I think at the time when we saw he got his start, when we saw you got your start, we thought, okay, this is like a situation where he can maybe he's not starting every single game,
Yeah,
but
of
he's
course.
definitely coming off the
Of
bench
course.
at some point.
Again,
a super sub situation type of deal,
Yeah.
at least for the foreseeable future.
That's the role I was completely okay with, that like I'm getting in and playing consistently off the bench. And whenever somebody's hurt, somebody's out, whatever, I can step up and start a few games. But like, I don't want it to come off that I was thinking that I should just be starting every game. Like that was not what it was going through my head. But I wanted to play, because the more you play, the more opportunity you can get to show that.
Yeah.
And again, some European team doesn't have to see me starting every game to maybe say that $3 million we could do that, and I can go overseas.
But even
now,
like the incremental steps to
Yeah.
more play or more minutes or something,
Yeah.
we would get like the start and then nothing, and then something else over here and then nothing, and then
Yeah.
U.S. Open Cup and then nothing, and it was.
There you go, months in between. And so that's what I'm talking about. The frustrating thing for me is like, how can I judge where I'm at when one moment I'm here and then I'm back down and then I'm here and then I'm back down?
Yeah.
And like it just.
And so in that transition, where's your head at as far as
So,
like on the field, but then off
I
the
was
field
frustrated. I was frustrated. I was starting to get real frustrated.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why is, so I had an agent named James Perry. I switched agents right during the middle of that summer. I don't know where along the story this is. If it's before that DC United game or after, but I switch agents
from James Perry
to Spencer Wadsworth.
Okay.
With not Stellar, Wasserman.
Wasserman.
My first conversation I ever had with Spencer, second conversation ever I had with Spencer. First one where he's officially my agent. He says, "Do you know that like half the MLS teams are trying to get you on loan right now?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I haven't heard nothing." He's like, "Yeah, like I just spoke to Colorado and this team and that team, blah, blah." Like, because I was just letting them know that like I'm your agent now, like if there was anything that we could do, because we're trying to solve a situation for you to play more.
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, I've never heard of that." So he then verifies that Carlos was not responding to any team that was trying to inquire about getting me on loan.
No way.
So not only was he sticking me on the bench or the non-roster, not even letting me play, he was not saying no, not telling my old agent, just not responding to any team that was trying to get me on loan. And Colorado, they're good now. They were not good back then.
Yeah.
So that would have been a perfect situation for me to go and play consistently. If Atlanta United didn't want me, that's
fine. But just let me go somewhere. Yeah.
And so they didn't respond to any of that. Never worked out a situation to where I was able to go. They just said no. And so then comes up, we got a camp with Tab. Now, this is right before our World Cup together.
Yeah.
Qualifiers
U20,
together.
The World Cup qualifying. U20, yeah.
Before you go into that, is this the first time that you have kind of substantial proof that Carlos is going like against me?
Yeah.
Because the not starting thing with Tata,
Yeah.
that
was the confirmation in my head that I needed. That all right, there are things that I can't control that are I don't know what to do. Like I'm a 17-year-old kid that's had all these dreams, that's always had success at every level, and now I'm at some place where like no matter if I really play good or bad or whatever, I can't play. So it's insanely frustrating for me because, again, I have all these people around me talking about how good you are and how you should be playing and how this, and that's kind of feeding into me as well. As not only my expectations for myself of like, I have to get better and train and play and whatever. And so then it starts to get to my head and I don't know if it does boil up here in a little bit of the story, but like it became insanely frustrating because I felt like I felt trapped, that there was nothing I could do.
Yeah.
And so then, again, these 10 weeks go by. We have a camp with the national team. Remember down in Florida where we played Venezuela?
Yeah.
And a couple other teams?
At IMG.
Yeah, at IMG. And remember how I wasn't able to go to the first 2 of the 3 games?
Yeah.
So Tab's trying to call me in for the 99s for our World Cup qualifiers, and Carlos says, no, like, we need him. Like, he's involved in our team. Like, we need him to play. I'm like, dude, I haven't played in 9 weeks. Like, let me go play these couple of friendly games so I can at least get some games.
Yeah.
Remember, are you on the bench regularly, though, at this point?
Yeah, regularly on the bench.
But just not seeing any minutes.
Not seeing any minutes. And so, where are they at? So he's like, what we're going to do is just let him stay with us for these 2 weeks. We have a couple injuries, like we need him. He can go to the last game, which is like a midweek game, fly down to IMG, play the game, and then be back by the weekend. And then this will be the last time we hold him back, and he can definitely go to qualifiers. Like no problems with it.
What do you think we're in October or November?
Yeah, October. Right around MLS playoffs.
Right around MLS playoffs, yeah.
And so I'm like, you know what? Fine, whatever. I'll go play this one game. Go down and play the game. Starting number 10, score a banger.
Yeah.
We won 3-1 or 2-1 or something like that. So come back to Atlanta, continue to just sit the bench and not really play. And now Tab sends out the official invite for qualifiers. And I'm kind of starting to lose my head a little bit because, I'm training well, I'm playing well. I was having some parties at my apartment and stuff that they started to get kind of upset about, but like they had told me in person, just do your stuff, like what you want to do. You want to have some people over after a game and stuff, just do it at your
How
apartment.
did they find out about this stuff that you were doing?
A couple guys on the team started to snitch that were competing for my spot.
Really? To who?
And you can ask Kenwin Jones about it, this individual person who would rat out to the one of the reasons Kenwin Jones got ticked off here in Atlanta was because somebody else was snitching on him of what he's doing off the field.
I always thought he did like his time in Atlanta, and I always wondered why.
Yeah,
that's so crazy.
And so that same person started to do it to me, and I was like, sure, we're 17, 18-year-old, but we're at our apartment just having friends over and hanging out, and no arrest, no like trouble, no whatever, going to training on time, working hard, whatever. Like, if you want to complain about that, sure, but like, you told us, just don't go do it in public. Do it here at your house, and you're safe and whatever.
Yeah. So you were everything was, you weren't going, you weren't.
I wasn't going out.
Well, you weren't showing up late to practice. Yep. You weren't. It wasn't.
You weren't giving him any reasons to like.
You were just had friends over.
No, not at this point.
So I guess there's no reason for these people to like get upset at you for.
No, I mean, if you want to complain about me having a couple drinks in my apartment at 18, like go ahead. But which kid isn't doing that? You know, what do you think these kids that go to college do?
Yeah.
You know, if I went to college and did the same thing, nobody would point any fingers. But because I'm a professional, like, you have more responsibility. But you're going to do it at your apartment, and they said there was nothing wrong with that, so that's what I did.
Yeah.
But anyway, then we come around to World Cup qualifiers. Tab sends email out. Carlos says no. I said, what do you mean? You mean no? We just agreed to it 2 months ago that I was definitely able to go to this qualifiers because in my head, I'm like, I'm not playing with Atlanta. This is my way out. I'm going to go here qualifiers, playing up a year, ball out, because I've been the starter on that team for the whole cycle, and then get out of here somewhere else, and then we can finally start new. And so my agent, Tab, and Carlos get on multiple phone calls where my agent and Tab are basically begging him to let me go. And he's like, no, man, like, we need him. Like, we have a couple injuries. Like, he's going to play in playoffs. Like, we definitely need him here. Like, he's going to play. He's like, he wouldn't keep me if I wasn't supposed to play, you know? There's no point. He would let him go to qualifiers. Well, first, I start a game where Carlos is smart. He's tricky. I'll give him that. Like, he gives me a start against.
I love when you say he gives me a start as if like Carlos is the coach.
Atlanta United gives me a start against Chicago Fire, the second to last game of the season, to where like it kind of like adds to his point of like this guy's gonna play. He's gonna play. And it was some random game against Chicago Fire, and I did pretty well.
It was a pointless game. It was kind of like
we were still competing for Community Shield or whatever it's called.
Oh, okay,
Supporter
So
Shield.
it was,
but like it was somewhat meaningful.
Yeah.
But we were definitely locked
just
in
already playoffs.
And so I played well. We won the game. I didn't play great, but it was another solid game to where if like anybody else went out there and played for the first time ever, they'd be like, "Dang, that was a good game," for like the second time ever. But so anyway, so it plays. So I'm kind of like, you know what? If I'm gonna play in playoffs, like, I might be okay missing a little bit of qualifiers because they had that middle thing where like you can change the roster.
You can cut
qualifiers.
3 guys.
Yeah,
it was 3 guys you could cut, and then you could
so that was kind of the agreement was that like, hey, let's play the first couple playoff games and we'll take a look at it like whenever the roster switch happens. If we're in good shape, Andrew can then go.
Yeah.
First playoff game comes around, I'm on the bench, don't play, and I'm like, that's not great, but like. Still more playoff games to go because this is whenever you play the home and away.
But at this point, you got to be wondering if I haven't played this first one, and I forget what the circumstances were with the players that were available, not available, the situation. But if you get this first one and you've been told no, he's going to play, he's going to be a part of it, and you don't play in the first game, you're going to be, are we doing this again?
Yeah, that's kind of going through my mind, but I'm like, okay, we still got this little switch, and the World Cup qualifiers in the group stage are like
it's pointless.
8-0. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll be there for the important games.
Yeah.
Second game comes around, not rostered. Third game comes around, not rostered.
Not rostered.
Not rostered. Not on the bench.
So
not
first
rostered.
game you're on the bench, don't play. Second, third game you're just not even
rostered.
in the squad.
I go to this is whenever the switch happens, like with the rosters and qualifiers. Yeah. Carlos like, no, you can't go, and we're like, dude, I'm not even rostered.
That is
like, let me go
insane.
play qualifiers. And the only reason you wouldn't do that is so that the world doesn't see that he's actually good enough to go play wherever, and we can keep him in his little bubble right here. That's exactly what was going through my head. That's exactly how I felt. And nobody, again, whenever I would go into meetings and say, hey, what do I need to do better? He would say, no, you're doing good. Keep doing your thing. Like, you'll get some time soon. And that was kind of it.
Carlos or Tata?
Carlos or Tata.
Oh, both
Tata
of them.
would say, go talk to him. And Carlos would say, nothing to hear. So that's kind of how it went. So, yeah, qualifiers went through. I wasn't able to go play. I wasn't on the roster for any playoff game after that until MLS Cup comes around.
Final.
Yeah, we all know quite a bit about this one. But so, like, this was the one thing that could glue me back together from losing my head was at least just being on the roster for the final. Because things could not go my way for this first 2 seasons, but this is the first trophy that Atlanta would win since I've been alive. Not Atlanta United, but just Atlanta sports in general.
Yeah.
As an Atlanta kid, that was the coolest thing to be a part of that. So if I was just on the bench, I could let everything else go.
All of the things that they did to you.
Yes,
holding
I was
you
like,
back from the
okay,
national team.
Yeah, I would
Giving
still be
you,
mad.
giving you
don't
false,
get me wrong.
but giving you these false promises like
But
we needed
I
you
would
to
be
play.
okay. And so the 2 days before, the day before they give the roster, and I'm not on it, and I'm freaking livid. And I remember they had some rules where we had to wear our little suits that we would wear to games. If you were not rostered, you had to wear the suit for the whole celebration. You were not allowed to put on a jersey or whatever. And I went to Carlos, a couple of us, and we're like, hey, man, like, in 20 years, I want to look back and say, look at me, a part of the team. I don't want to look at it as like, oh, that guy looks like an front office guy, like in a suit. Like, I want to be a part of the team with my jersey.
It's a little embarrassing. It's a little
embarrassing. Yeah, you like all these people.
I forget. Was everyone else in their jerseys? I forget what.
Well, so it's like, for example, the ones that played and were part of it, whether you're on the bench, you're in your jerseys, you're rostered, you're in your jerseys. But for the guys that didn't make the roster, you're in a suit, so that like when the game
I thought you meant for the
ends.
celebrate. Oh, okay.
Well,
gotcha.
But you're in the suit for the game, and you're not allowed. They said we're not allowed to change out of it. So if you look at pictures, look at the picture where Patrick Okonkwo, Leandro Gonzalez-Perez, and all of them are sliding into that trophy. You'll see Patrick has a suit on, and that's because he wasn't allowed to change into a uniform because he wasn't rostered. Now, wasn't allowed by MLS. That wasn't allowed by Atlanta United. That's what Carlos and them made the rules. So I felt like that was the last and final straw, just stab in the heart to make you feel worthless. That not only are you not a part of the team, but we want you to also look like you're not a part of the team.
Yeah.
And so that was, I lost my head at that point.
Was that like crash out? Like you're just like.
That was crash dummy.
Yeah.
My head was so fried. I literally, a couple weeks later, I told my agent, I almost quit that offseason. I told my agent I was done. I told my family I was done. I told everybody I didn't want to play anymore. I just wanted to step away from the game for a while and not play because I was so far gone. Yeah. Because I was so competitive and so driven to be the best. And it wasn't even like I was getting an opportunity to even be anywhere close to that. Like it was so opposite of what I was told that it was going to be, or that even I don't want to be given anything, but just the opportunity that if I can go play good, I can continue to play.
Yeah. If every time you were on the roster, or not every time, but like if you had been given more opportunities to, I guess what you're saying is, give me the opportunity.
The opportunities that I earned, I wanted to have. That's the way I would put it, is that I felt like I was earning opportunities. I don't want to be giving anything, but I was earning opportunities by the way I was training, by the way I would always played, especially when you look around at some other guys that were trash. Well, that's what I was going to say.
Was there a lot of opportunities given to players that you're like,
that
why
I'm
are
like,
these guys?
how?
Yeah.
And so that's another frustrating thing. But anyway, so then that night happens, night before MLS Cup. So again, I'm not rostered. There is no way that I'm playing in this game tomorrow. And I go on Snapchat and say, fuck this, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't care how it goes.
It's like a photo.
Screw this. Yeah, it's a picture. It's like a video of me and Kevin Barajas and Patrick Okonkwo in a car driving around like the night before. Not in a bar, not in a club, not with any alcohol, just a video. We're playing a Juice WRLD song, who was my favorite artist.
Just a video in a car.
Yeah, just a video in a car.
I think the only thing that... I think we had heard that you went out drinking.
Which that's the story. No, I wasn't drinking. I was there in the car riding around with them, and we were all hanging out at our apartment. We all lived side by side with each other.
It's on a private Snapchat.
It's on a private Snapchat story.
Only people that you are friends with
that
on
I've been
Snapchat.
posting stuff on for a while. That never. I mean, again, it's posting me sipping a beer and whatever dumb stuff that I would put on there.
Yeah.
But nothing had ever gotten out to where I was like, all right, this is a secure, 30, 40 people on it. And so it had got out. And again, I didn't even really care if it got out because I didn't think I was doing anything that bad.
How did it get out?
Fuck this.
How did that?
Relative of Arthur Blank, at least from my investigation report.
They had to
I think there was one person on there that was at an MLS Cup party the night before the final.
And saw the video.
That saw the video because it's the text that I got from Carlos is like a phone like this that has my story on it on the screen, and then he's taking a picture of it
from his phone.
So somebody that was on that private story, like it's not like they screenshotted it because you get those notifications, right?
Yeah.
So it's somebody that's from that list that
and
has
there's only an X amount of people that you can be like, okay, who from this?
Rayshawn McGann from Spain is not showing Carlos at the party. Like there's only a couple people.
There's only a couple people it could be.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Did you have beef with whoever this relative might have been, or was there any beef at all? Like,
no. We were always cool. That's why I was like, it's funny because
you're saying after the fact. You're saying like
no, before we were cool. I mean, again,
no. Before the fact, like
before. Oh yeah, like he would have a reason that he or she would have a reason.
He's not rostered.
She doesn't know that though. She doesn't know that.
Okay, you're not.
It doesn't know that. I'm not gonna get to genders. Yeah,
you're not rostered. You're not drinking, which I don't know why. I'm trying to remember why.
Because what else would you get suspended from Final for?
Oh, maybe that was it then.
There's only so many options unless you can let somebody come out and clarify what happened. But Atlanta United never let me say anything about it.
Yeah.
You weren't.
So there's no alcohol in the car.
No, there's no alcohol in the car.
Not at a bar.
Nope.
I think the other thing.
The only damning thing was just that you were just like, F this, like you're just frustrated, like you're done with this. Yeah.
I don't care how the final goes tomorrow. I said something like that.
You said something like that.
Yeah. I was like, fuck the final tomorrow. I don't care how this goes.
Yeah.
Did you type it? It was
typed out. So it's a video of us. La 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 la.
Someone typed that.
Here's the thing. Now, what got out to the media was that I guess we didn't get that part of it.
No, nobody's ever heard this because I've never been allowed to speak about it.
Yeah,
and it's just like years passed, so it's just like when I was still playing, I'm like, there's no point in me going on and bringing up rumors from stuff that happened years ago. Now that I'm retired and not playing, like I'd like to tell my story.
Yeah.
To where people can hopefully people view it from like an unbiased perspective and say, I think he's an idiot. Fair. But like there's a lot more to the story than what like your initial people know because again, nothing that you guys have heard has ever come from me saying anything. It's just been whatever has been let go.
So what was said in the media? Like you were listening it out. What was said the night before that he allegedly did?
No, so it was 2018, so this is 6 years ago at this point. And what we didn't know, what we assumed happened, because I think it was you were suspended for breaking team rules or something like that.
Team curfew or something.
And I think, I guess there was a rumor saying that you had gone to a bar and were drinking or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is coming to my head, but I feel like maybe I don't know why speeding would be an issue outside of just getting a ticket.
I would have not gone to any game if that was the punishment.
So I don't know that had anything to do with it, but I think the assumption was that that you were drinking.
Yeah, I mean that's the only logical thing that you could think of like
the bar thing was I think someone said that you got caught, like there was a picture of you in a bar. That's right. I think you might have told me that, or maybe you might have just ignited that in my head. But I remember drinking being a thing.
Yeah.
There was no text, there was no Snapchat picture, there was nothing like that were ever, as far as I remember, ever got brought up in any kind of conversations with other media members or when it came to the story or anything. It was just he broke team rules. He's not going to be there tomorrow.
Yeah. Now again,
this came out
though. The reason why this got leaked. This is again going to go back to if you care at all about said player, you will protect them through negative stuff and handle it behind closed doors.
Yeah.
The reason now they could have let me. Carlos sent me the message in the morning. I woke up to it at like 8 a.m. and is like, you're suspended from the final. Like, please don't come. We'll let you know when to be at
with
the
the
next
picture.
event. Yes, with the screenshot of my
Yeah.
video. So that was hard. That was how I found out.
Oh,
that was a heartbreak. That was a
That's
heart drop.
your heart just
First thing in the
stomach
morning,
yeah.
man. Just
yeah.
And so again, if they cared at all to protect, now again, I did something dumb. That's not. I'm not disavowing that or whatever you want to say. I'm not saying I didn't do anything dumb.
Yeah.
But if Atlanta United cared to keep that within wraps and keep it behind closed doors, they could have just let me go to the final, celebrated with the team. The reason everybody found out that I did something dumb is because I was in none of the photos after. My Twitter didn't start blowing up of like, where's Andrew, until about 2 or 3 hours into the celebration where everybody's like, I'm just noticing Carleton's not there.
And then that's when the question gets brought up.
And then the question gets brought up after.
To who? Who was the first one?
Carlos,
Oh, it was the Carlos.
And Carlos said that he broke
was at
the
a
team
press
rules.
conference.
Yeah.
And they said, why is Andrew Carleton not there?
Yeah, and he said he broke rules. So if they just wanted, again, let me go to the final. I was already not going to play in the final anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, just let me go and sit there and do my thing and whatever, and then fine me $50,000 or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Like,
handle it
afterward.
behind closed doors.
Yeah,
where
trade me,
yeah,
release me, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I already wanted out anyway. So,
you just
like,
made it a huge deal.
You made it a huge deal because,
deal.
in my opinion, it verified or I don't know, verified. I don't know if that's the right word. It validated him not playing me, or Atlanta not playing me, or anytime they kicked me to the curb and didn't whatever. It validated everything that he had, and that was my issue. Was I gave him the ability to do that.
I was gonna say I in a vacuum I can see how the punishment is appropriate. Even outside the vacuum, I can see. You can't. I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Then again, you're 17 at the time, right?
Of course.
17-year-olds do dumb stuff all the time. Stuff they regret all the time.
You're not an adult yet. You're not.
Of course.
If
that's your way of doing it, sure. But let me apologize. Let me say something. Let me address. Let me clarify what actually happened. Right?
Yeah.
All that happened was all the media just ran with it all around the U.S. soccer world that Andrew Carleton decided to go drink and get fucked up the night before a final.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. He blew up because he's a 17-year-old who got so heated about how he's getting treated that he posted something stupid saying terrible things about the club in a Snapchat.
Yeah. A private Snapchat.
That you can all say that everybody can look around and be like, 17-year-olds are idiots. They do dumb stuff. But he's not out at a bar partying the night before MLS Cup.
Yeah.
Whenever you can go party for the next 4 weeks after this.
Yeah.
So again, I disagree with how it was handled. If you want to handle it that way, sure, but let me at least say something, or at least say what happened.
Well, yeah.
Don't just say he broke a team rule and then let the media go do whatever they want to do with it and come up with whatever story they want.
Yeah,
because that just makes me look way worse than what
that's-
actually was.
And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation because, like you said, Eric, 100%. You can't do it.
Yes.
100%. What it was wrong.
Correct.
Right, but you also are a 17-year-old. You're not an adult yet. We all make mistakes. We've all been there. Where when you're in that light of being a professional soccer player, everyone does dumb things. I've done dumb things in my career that just never got out there. Mm-hmm. Every professional player has done dumb things that have never got out there, no matter where they're playing, whatever's been out. I think that it would be really frustrating because you're the first homegrown player ever for the club. You grew up in Atlanta, and then to not be there in that moment, I'm sure probably killed you.
That was
That
was kind of the cherry on top of like wanting to quit, basically.
Yeah.
I was done with it. I don't even know if I trained that off season. Like,
Did you watch the final?
Soccer. Yeah. I was praying they won because if they lost, I was screwed. Can I go to the bathroom real quick?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm sure that was difficult. That was difficult to watch the final, to not be a part of it, and to kind of see. But from your sense of it, you're sharing from the perspective of like, listen, here's the buildup for the last 7-8 months of like why it got to this.
Yeah, it wasn't like I just decided.
It wasn't just like
you
got pissed one night, you had a bad attitude, and like that's what happened. Or like it wasn't like like you were just left off the roster. You're like, okay, I'm just pissed. I'm left off the roster. I'm gonna do this. It's like no, like there's a series of all of these events where like little by little your patience is getting smaller and smaller, your head's getting more and more frustrated, and then it just goes to that ultimate moment where boom, everything just kind of blows up from that moment.
It's not something I'm proud of. I regret that. I don't really regret much, to be honest. Like, you go through life and you make whatever decision you think is to do in that moment, and like emotions and different stuff goes into it that like you can look at it now and be like, why on earth would you do that?
Yeah.
But like at the time, that's not how you're thinking, and
yeah.
it's not how it is. So anybody that says like, oh, you're an idiot, like you don't have any idea of what it's like to be in that position.
How did your friend? Because obviously I know your parents well and great people.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that they were hurting too. And like,
Yeah.
how did your friends and close family react to it? Your team that's around you, how did they react to a moment like that?
Well, that was another thing too that I thought was weird about the way the team handled it, was that like everybody at the team or at the game was like, "Where's Andrew?" So not only does it also like it created a distraction within the whole team that I felt bad about. That was the only thing I felt bad about, really, was that like.
Oh, because during the
like,
build up
you're
of the
taking
game,
the focus off the winning, and now you're at the center.
Well,
of
yeah,
no.
But I'm talking about
during
before the game. I'm talking about before the game.
People are like, Andrew, here. Yeah,
yeah, because I was texting with Chris, obviously, and he's like, yeah, everybody's asking where you're at, and nobody's really answering any questions. He's like, what do you want me to say? I'm like, bro, just tell him I'm sick or something like that right now. And so like everybody's kind of like distracted from the actual game that the final they're about to play, and I felt bad about that because I didn't want to be a distraction to the team.
Of course.
But like again, I thought that's another negative way to handle it. You can just let me go in and not take any distraction off of the game, but because I wasn't there, obviously there was distraction.
Yeah.
But my parents were. I think my parents were kind of. They just didn't really say anything. You know, they came and got me from my apartment like the next day or something like that. And just kind of gave me a hug. And I think they kind of knew all the stuff I was dealing with, and like
mentally and stuff like that.
Yeah, to step on somebody whenever they're down.
Of course,
kind of. They knew that wasn't going to help at all, and so they just kind of said, we're here for you.
Yeah,
we'll get through this. Blah,
Did you have anyone to talk to during this whole thing? Like a
good friend, Chris Goslin.
Like a therapist, you mean? Or something
like a sports therapist.
Like a sports therapist.
No, I didn't.
Did the club ever reach out to like be like, hey, maybe you should see a sports therapist, or try to like give you something like that?
Year 3, they thought I had an alcohol problem, so they sent me to freaking rehab. Not rehab, but like they sent me to. This is what's ridiculous too. Is that like the third year I started going out a bit more, because at that point again my head was gone. I didn't care. I was partying quite a bit.
2018.
2019.
Oh, 2019. Yeah. Sorry.
And so that was, I guess, the only time they offered a therapist. Was there? They were
Is
like,
go ahead. Sorry.
It was one of those things that it wasn't even like it came from a place of like concern. It was just like, yeah, we're not letting you train until you. I can't remember if it was that, but it was like.
Was they protecting themselves?
Yeah, they had found out that I went out drinking one night before a training session or something in year 3, and were like, you got to go see the alcohol abuse. Member of the
U.S.
player,
of the MLS
PA or
something.
whatever.
Okay, yeah.
Because you got to talk with him, and if we catch you drinking again, then we're going to send you to rehab. And I'm like, bro, I don't have a drinking problem. I have a not playing problem, and like just let me out of here. Like I would have been perfectly fine if you just released me after the MLS Cup. I was praying they released me, and they're like, no, you're here again next season. And I was like,
you had how many years left of your contract?
That was my last guaranteed year, 2019.
2019 was your last guaranteed
and then
year.
I had an option year the next year.
And would you say that because obviously the nightlife in Atlanta and all that kind of stuff, would you say that had an effect on you? Like, was it a situation where you could go out and people knew you and people let you in because you're underage? Like, would that have a big effect on it?
You could go wherever you wanted and do whatever you wanted.
You could.
Yeah. Which was a negative thing, but I didn't, again. People, like, I, again, made my story worse because then I started to egg on and do more and more and more, like, partying and stuff like that. But that was already after my head was so far gone and the chips had already fell where they are and whatever. And so I started partying, and, you could go to any club or any bar or whatever.
That party started after the
MLS Cup.
Yeah, no, like, I was partying a little bit before that.
But you were involved. So you were like still focused.
Yes,
like your
I was
head
partying
was there,
on times that like you didn't have training the next day. I was having it at my apartment, stuff like that. And then once they got me punished for having parties at my apartment or whatever, again, you're in an apartment, like you can't be that loud. So it's not like you're having freaking ragers in there. You're just having some people over and having a couple Coronas and whatnot. But then once then I was like, all right, if you're gonna get me in trouble for doing this, I can't do crap. And I might as well go out if I'm going to get in trouble.
And so you say that 2018 offseason going into 2019, like you didn't touch a ball.
I don't know if I trained 3 times maybe.
My
head was so far gone. The only thing that was going to help is me leaving that situation. It just became so negative and toxic. I didn't want anything.
Was there any opportunities for you to leave that offseason? Was your agent trying to find something?
I didn't talk to my agent. I told him I don't want to play, and so I just didn't talk to him. I think what would have been great, what I think about now, is I wonder if I could have held out. Like, just not showing up, take the fine or whatever, force my way out. I wish my agent would have put that idea in my head. Because the story wasn't
That's sometimes good,
yet.
sometimes not good.
Yeah, but I mean, it already.
But I guess
looking at it now, it already turned out as the worst it could get. So
I guess if you're looking at if you're thinking about this situation is so bad that I don't care if it may be bad for me to hold out, but the benefit of potentially holding out and getting moved somewhere else is so much. It outweighs the negative of
At
that
point,
it was rather that guy.
It was quitting was my next option.
Yeah.
I didn't care where I went as long as I got out of there because I just knew as long as I go somewhere and play and have a fair opportunity, I would go wherever else I needed to go because I was only 18 or 19, still pretty young.
And so Tata left that offseason.
Yeah, and we had Frank de Boer. As soon as I shook his hand, I knew he didn't like me.
So what happened?
How does that work?
I don't know. He just had a look. You
were just like,
you got to think. That's my first day. I'm seeing everybody since I just got suspended from MLS.
You hadn't seen anyone.
I hadn't seen anybody.
So it's been MLS Cup's end of November.
It's been
a
month and a half.
Month and a half.
And so I don't know. I just shook his hand and he kind of gives like a kind of like. I mean, you've seen Frank and his kind of look from interviews and stuff like that.
It's like a deadpan look that just like
it's just there's not much behind the eyes.
So you think you didn't even have a fair shot with him from the beginning? Like it was just
he was just as lenient. He was fine with me with at the start at least. But again, my head was gone, and so he started to say that I had disciplinary issues and stuff like that. But
the maturity that's when the maturity thing came.
Yeah, but that was after the passport situation.
Yes.
What was that situation?
Another great story that I never got to talk about.
Tell it, man. Tell it.
Well, before we get there, so this is coming from De Boer. It says Carleton is still young and he has to learn from that, and we spoke about that. He still has to grow up as a man, and he expressed that Carleton had a lot of talent to succeed, so he realized your talent.
Yeah.
He said, but being a professional requires discipline both on and off the pitch, and he implied that you need to grow more in your physical strength and should engage in a substantial weight training nutrition program. He brought that up to you.
So what's funny?
He never talked to me about
he never talked to you about
I didn't get that far in the article. No, I didn't see that far.
What's funny is that I think if I remember correctly, the comments from Tata about you were very much in the vein of we don't want to rush him. Mm-hmm. He's developing, and we're going to get him. There was always like the promise of
something.
Maybe not the promise, but like the
plan,
the plan, or maybe the expectation that it's coming. It takes time.
Yeah.
And then immediately with Frank de Boer, after this whole situation with
it's a lot changed between
obviously a lot changed, but then the conversation was the maturity level, the professionalism, all that stuff. In the media, not having this backstory, it all kind of makes sense now.
Yeah.
It all kind of, but obviously without that context, you just
look at a kid that's a fucking nut job.
Yeah.
Which I mean, like, I get that's the way people look at it, but like, they don't know, and I was never able to talk about 90% of the story. Like, they just view it as some kid that continuously, for no reason, just does stupid stuff. When, again, it is stupid stuff, but, like, there's reasons why a 17, 18, 19-year-old makes those dumb decisions.
Yeah.
And so the passport situation, now this one is actually... This is one of the more interesting ones because I don't even know.
Let me just ask straight up because this is how we heard it.
Yeah, this is gonna.
We heard that you forgot your passport and then you were left off the roster and ultimately didn't make the trip.
Yeah. Now
and so we just fans and the media, we were just like,
what an idiot.
Who forgets their passport?
I'm sitting there in my apartment like, there's no way they ran with this story.
All right,
this makes me look terrible.
That's what we heard. What happened?
So. We're playing in Toronto, and we have like an injury crisis kind of right now at the point. We have like 17 or 18 first-team players, and then you got the homerowns that are down with the second team and some second-team guys. So like there's plenty of guys to be able to fill a roster, but like not actual first-team players. So I'm supposed to be traveling to Canada. I go like 2 days before to my dresser that always has my passport in it. I open the thing. There's no passport there, and I'm like, oh, God. So I start looking around. And I text them like 2 nights before we leave, not before the game, 2 nights before we leave. And I'm like, hey, like, I can't find my passport. So like, if you guys need to do some stuff with the roster, like, I'm just giving you a heads up because like I'm tearing my apartment apart right now and I can't find it. So I tear my apartment apart. I can't find my passport. I go to my parents' house, tear that house apart, can't find my passport. I tell them that let's say we traveled on Friday. I told them on Thursday morning, I don't have my passport. Like, I don't know where it is. I'm sorry. I've lost it. But I know I can't travel without my passport. So here's time, because I know I'm on the roster, for you to make an adjustment and get somebody else in there.
Yeah.
Well, they don't do that. They purposely travel with 16 guys. They have Chris Goslin, Patrick Okonkwo, Lagos Kunga, maybe John Gallagher, maybe Lawrence Wyke. I can't remember who's with the second team at this point.
They don't
they
bring him
could
up.
legally easily call up just to sit on the bench.
And they don't even do that.
They don't do that. They travel with 16 guys, and everybody's like,
They have 5 subs.
5 subs, yeah,
And
instead of
4
7.
4 subs in a
And
goal.
how much advance warning you gave them? 2 or 3 days?
I told him for the first time on, say, if
they
we're
travel
traveling on Friday
you
on a
told them
Wednesday
you
night,
told them.
and then Thursday morning, I
told them I can't find
told
it.
him I can't find it.
And then
I told him, look, I'm going to continue to obviously keep looking for it, but like I can't find it.
Yeah.
And so they just traveled with that, and then they said I can't remember how it got out that it was a passport situation. I think they had said something
Frank
where
DeBoer told us.
Yeah, I think Frank said that he forgot his passport. And again, like with different language and stuff, that makes it seem like I showed up at the airport, got to the gate,
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
what we
like,
thought.
yeah, and it's like, I need my passport.
Wait, but do you say this was something that was lost in translation because he's not a
I
native
don't
English
know.
speaker?
I
Oh,
don't
you
know. But again, Atlanta never clarified the fact of, like, I told them. And again, they could have given Chris or Patrick an opportunity to go travel with the first
and
team.
then nothing would have came out of it.
And
'cause
nothing
then
would have
it's just
came
they have
out of
normal
it.
bench.
The way it should have been handled is that he does not have a passport, or he is his passport, whatever,
was lost.
Not that he forgot his. If that,
Yeah. That makes it seem
That's
like
a
and again,
completely
people
different
like-
story.
People like Doug Robertson tweeted it 15 times about, what an idiot he gets show up to the airport. And I'm like, bro, you don't know anything about the story. Like, I was dumb, but like not as dumb enough to show up at the airport. I've traveled internationally 40 times in my life before, so I know you need your passport.
to go, yeah.
I was just thinking, like, all of the.
And don't you think if I forgot say I did get there and forgot my passport, don't you think I would have just gone home, got the passport, and got a different flight the next day or later that evening? Like, there's been plenty of times where, not plenty of times, but like, even, for example, one time when we played an Open Cup game in Orlando that same year, Yosef was hurt, or he got hurt in training the day before the game, and I wasn't supposed to travel. And we were only traveling with like 18 guys that time because Frank didn't really do the 19th man, I don't think. Well, he got hurt in training. So I got called up to travel, so I had to go home and get my stuff. Couldn't make it to the flight, so I had a separate flight, which shows that, like, on a couple of occasions where guys will travel separately, because, again, it was a
Here and there thing?
No, well, I'm saying, like, it's not a private flight. Like, you flew
It's commercial, yeah.
commercial.
Yeah. Oh, this is before COVID, so it's commercial.
So,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
there's plenty of other flights out there
yeah.
to just get another flight to go if I happen to just leave my passport at
Yeah,
home and had
yeah.
to drive back and get it.
Yeah.
Or they could have just brought up a couple other
Or
players.
they could have brought
yeah.
a couple other players.
That's
But again,
insane.
That's a crazy different version of
yeah. So again, I'm not again with all these stories, like, I'm not trying to say I'm innocent and didn't do anything wrong and I'm not an idiot. I know that I messed up and did some terrible dumb things, but it's nowhere near what is actually the
fabricated.
story
Yeah.
that has come out.
Can I ask where your passport actually was?
One of my friends, who's not really a great friend after all, had taken it. I found out a long story that I can't really go into.
Yeah.
But the long and short of it
I
is that
never got it back. I had to go get a new passport. So
that's a crazy different version of what we heard. And that, I mean,
yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
But those are the
crazy.
type of things that I talk about that, like, again, if you care about this player, this thing could easily never get out. And you could find me, you could whatever, I get it. But, like, if you didn't want it to get out, it's easy for it not to get out. You purposely let it get out so that you have a reason of sticking me, some really talented young kid that everybody wants to see on the bench or on the not roster.
And the first thought isn't that, this is because the first thought is that I guess at the time you were 17 or you 18 at this point.
Yeah,
No.
I was 18 or 19.
Oh, yeah, 18, 19.
About to turn 19.
Still, in everyone's mind who's been following you and Atlanta United, it's like, oh, this is just something a dumb thing that a kid did. They're still looking at it from those eyes and not thinking about all the maybe some people thought about it, but not thinking about all the international trips you've already taken for the national
it's
team.
not like I don't know that you need a passport.
Yeah.
I think at least my thought was like, oh, maybe he just forgot that Canada wasn't United.
Yeah,
that was one of
51st
my
state.
that was one of my thoughts too. But
Yeah.
that's a different version of events than what we heard for sure. Because that's and obviously what got out because that's And yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if there was like a translation situation.
That's what the first thing I
that's-
thought. Maybe it
because
just got
Frank
lost in
DeBoer,
translation.
Frank
and
DeBoer
did he speak English very well? I mean,
No, he
was-
spoke decent
It
English,
was
but
fine.
again, like, you know how little words can
Yeah,
be
of
big
course.
changes.
Like, for
in-
example, him saying forgot might have, maybe he just thought he said like lost, or like he
Yeah.
just got the two words
Yeah.
mixed up. in
No,
English,
there
like,
was
you know.
there was another example of maybe that the how he said something maybe got lost in the culture difference of,
Yeah.
of where he's from and the English that
Yeah,
we
I
speak
don't-
here, whatever.
yeah.
But it was when he called the fans spoiled.
Oh, I did remember that.
He called the fans. He
spoiled.
called the fans spoiled at one point, and
That
because
probably
of
didn't go well.
all the success that we had in the
Yeah.
first two seasons, and that we had in the second season we had won MLS Cup, and that how
And he was trying
you
to
know,
cover for the fact that he was losing all these games and saying that like
yeah.
you can't have this much.
But at the same
expectations
time,
and-
in his defense, he had just lost Almiron.
Yeah.
Kitty was not the
Yeah, yeah,
replacement,
yeah.
and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to fight through
Yeah.
that, and success wasn't happening, even though he had all this young
yeah,
talent.
and I don't think
on-
he mean it in a negative way. I just think it's one of those translation things that doesn't come across.
But
So-
it got picked up in the media, and that thing blew up as in like he doesn't like the fans, or he
Yeah.
thinks we should shut up, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was not at all how he meant it, but that's how it got picked up.
Let me ask you this though, because on that Atlanta United roster, you have some American players that were established pros
Yeah.
that maybe, I don't want to say that they did a bad job because I don't know what happened, but you have like a Michael Parkhurst, for example,
Mm-hmm.
veteran, experienced, plays the game for a lot of years. A Brad Guzan,
Yeah.
veteran, experienced, overseas, whatever it might be. Did anyone on that roster like put their arm over your shoulder and be like,
Yeah.
hey, listen, kid, come here, like,
I
what's
don't-
going on?
I
How
don't-
can I help?
Yeah,
Like,
to some degree, but like, I mean, again, it goes back to kind of like everybody's a pro and like
no, everyone's just
sort
kind
your
of in
own
their
stuff
own.
out.
Yeah.
Now again, people did come and have conversations from here and there, especially like Breck Shea, which maybe isn't the greatest influence, but like,
Oh, yeah, Breck Shea.
but
Breck
he's
Shea
one of my
was,
boys. I like Breck. But Nagby, Parkhurst and Brad talked to me a little bit, Jeff a little bit as well. But again, I don't think there was anything in that moment that was really gonna like change my mind
Yeah.
on how I felt in the situation. And a lot of their conversations were kind of like, yeah, like I kind of get like why you're upset and why you're this, that, the other, but you gotta like hold it in or you
Yeah.
gotta like not let it affect you. And
You and who had a conversation about that?
I mean, a few guys on the
Oh,
team.
okay,
Yeah. I don't know exactly how the conversations went, but like they were along those lines.
They were
like,
in that
look,
gist,
buddy,
yeah.
like
But it
I know
more or
you're
less was
upset.
kind of like in the ear, out the other, because
Yeah,
you're just
kinda.
going through so much. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Again, I just wanted out, so unless there was an opportunity to get
Yeah.
out, I wasn't really listening to much.
And so the rest of that 2019 season, you're just
after that,
kind of
Frank
with the
put me on
second,
the second team.
you're just
and
the
that
second
was-
team.
That was that.
Yeah.
But again, I was partying and drinking quite a bit at that time. But like Barco, Brandon, Dion Pereira, all the other underage guys were doing the same thing, and none of them never came up about anything.
Yeah.
The only reason why they cared is because it was me.
Yeah.
but
You were
all
like
the other-
you feel
all
like you
the
were
other under-
you feel like you were a scapegoat in a sense, or like
Sort
they
of,
just
but
kind
it
of
was
just
just
like pick
kinda
on the
like-
kid that's already down.
I didn't want any of the other them to get in trouble, but it's just like, again, it just went into like, why can't I, if I'm also not even playing and like you don't even have any interest in me, like these other guys that are playing and stuff, they're going out and drinking as often as I am.
Yeah.
And like every time I go do something, you guys are up my case about it, and like I'm sometimes going out with these guys and I see how much they're drinking and stuff, and I would go out and have a couple drinks. I didn't even drink like afterwards. Like I didn't drink a lot. I would just go out,
Yeah.
have a couple drinks, and some other guys would get pretty drunk, and like nothing would ever come from it. And these are underage guys as well.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but I'm just trying to say like, I was also underage around the same age, and I got all types
All
of
the
trouble
heat.
for it, and they never did.
Yeah.
What did they expect from you then? Like, I guess that's the question. Is if you're by all I guess metrics we'll call it, but if Tata Martino is talking about starting you and you're having that kind of progress, by the time Frank DeBoer comes around, you're already what do they expect? Like,
Well, by the
what do
time
they
Frank
expect
DeBoer,
you
by the time the age came around, I think I had gotten into too much stuff. I was, as I said, going out and stuff. I wasn't really in the right mindset.
But
to
were
be
they just
playing
was
like
their
that
mindset
anyway.
like we'll just write out the contract and then we'll release them afterwards?
Again, that's what I was thinking. And again, I was like, bro, I'm going to just go have fun, do my thing. try to enjoy life a little bit and get away from all this negativity. And whatever happens in soccer, that's fine for this next year. My contract's done, and they're not going to pick up my option. No way, because they don't want me.
And they pick it up.
And then they sent me on loan. And I'm like, bro, just let me go. Like, if you don't want me here, just let me go. Carlos said, like, in his thing, yeah, we're picking up Andrew's option, but he's going on loan next year.
Would just being let go be a better option?
That's what I thought. Why would you want to pay my salary? And
well,
I'm asking, but it's like,
I mean, for you professionally.
Yeah, it would have been better just to let me go. This thing has been a terrible run. Like, we'll just cut it loose.
Are you saying it's so you didn't have to go to a USL team? You could have gone some.
I was fine going to USL team.
I guess that's what I'm asking. Is like,
but I wanted to be free of Atlanta.
Okay.
I didn't want that. I didn't want
the loan. Like,
I didn't want a loan because that means I might come back. I don't want it. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be a part of it. But again, because I was going on loan, I was somewhat okay. But that year, I had made up my mind that if I had to go back to Atlanta, I was not playing.
That 2020 year.
Yeah, 2020 COVID year. Yeah, I had made up my mind that offseason that if they kept me around and made me stay there and just play with the second team here and there and whatever and train with them, because by the end of the third year, I was just training with the second team.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, if you're going to re-sign me just to force me to go do that, I'm not showing up.
Yeah.
I didn't tell them that, but that's what was going through my head.
Yeah.
But then they said they would send me on loan. So that was enough of a fresh start to where I was.
So did 2020, you didn't even go to preseason with Atlanta. You just went
No,
straight to Indy.
I just went straight to Indy.
Straight to Indy.
Now there's some drama within this deciding where I went on loan.
Really?
So it was between Indy 11 and St. Louis FC. Or no, it's not St. Louis. Louisville. Louisville, because John Hackworth was there, which was my residency national team coach.
Oh, Hackworth. Oh, yeah.
So that was the perfect situation for me to go to. Again, if you care at all, I voiced I want to go to Louisville to play with Hack because Hack knows me. It's a fresh start. I can play really well and kind of restart my career. Yeah. And Hackett said, look, I know you've made mistakes. I know you as a person. I know you're not this idiot that does a lot of dumb stuff. You just had a hard time. Come here and we can kind of restart things. And so I had said to them, like, that's where I want to go. And Hack said, we have $10,000 because USL teams have low budgets. So how it works is I was getting paid, say, like $100,000 that year from Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. And the USL clubs are going to have to take some of your
they're going to have to pay some of
your
that.
salary.
So they said, look, I have $10,000 is all I can do. But he said, look, I'm going to beg my owner for $20,000. I promise I'll get it. I can do $20,000 of your salary.
And Atlanta will pay the other
hypothetically,
80. Yeah.
But he said, I will do everything I can to get as much as we can, but that's as much as we can do because we're already over budget.
Yeah.
And Indy said, we'll pay $50,000. And that $30,000 difference, Carlos said, now keep in mind I'm a homegrown. So this does not affect the salary. This affects nothing other than $30,000, which maybe sounds like a lot of money, but like
in the grand scheme of things of a club
that's worth
United,
billions of dollars,
yeah.
It's not worth anything. And he forced me to go to Indy instead of Louisville because of that $30,000 difference.
Did you let him know you wanted to go to?
Yes. Me and my agent both told him I want to go to Louisville.
And it was the $30,000 that just so they know.
And they said we won't let you go to Louisville. You can rather go to Indy or you could stay here, unless Louisville pays $50,000 and they're not paying.
And they're not going to do it.
So then over $30,000 I had to go to Indy, which wasn't terrible because I was out of there. But like again, if you cared, you would send me to the place that and Carlos even said to John Hackworth, because they were having a conversation about it because he was the coach of Louisville.
Yeah.
He said, look, John, I know Louisville is the best place for Andrew. That would be best for his career to be there with you because he knows you and you could help him. But if you can't pay the $50,000, we're not letting him go.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize Carlos is so cutthroat, man.
That's tough.
Goodness gracious.
So I mean, again, I wouldn't.
BIBLE. I promise you that was the conversation. I'm not just making stuff up like this.
I wouldn't even. But I wouldn't even. I mean, all clubs are like that. It's just
all clubs. That's not like a rare occurrence. Don't get me wrong.
100%.
But it just kind of goes into the story of like me feeling like they don't care and they don't want anything to do 100%. With me. So.
I mean, I went.
It created the mentality.
Yeah, it just confirmed everything that was going through my head at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I went through the same exact thing going on a loan where like I had New York. My last year, my contract, they had no intention of having me there. Like they're like, you're out of the plans. So like you should look for first of all, someone had called me from the team. Not even a coach. He was like a data analyst kind of guy. So not even anyone on the coaching staff. It was just a data analyst guy who was like, hey mate, talk to the coach. Not in the plans.
Yeah.
He was just like, you know, we can just terminate your contract. You're free to go wherever you want. And I was like, that's not how it works. Like, I could terminate my contract, but then I might be screwed. I won't find a team.
Keep that big ass contract. You know what I'm saying?
And so I was like, no, I'm going to try to find a loan. So we found a loan, but the club was in a similar situation in Louisville, but they had like zero money to give. They're like, we can't cover anything. And so New York came back, and they were like, oh, yeah, like, you can go there, but you got to take an X amount pay cut.
Yeah.
And then that you're just kind of left with the option of, like, what can you do? That's a hard part.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing to go to. Do you think so? But ultimately, the end of the year went okay, right?
It was COVID, so like you barely really played. Our team was sick. We had our coach it wasn't great, but I played decent. Didn't play great, but it was a COVID year, so it's like nobody really watched anything, nobody really cared, and so you go into the next offseason. I'm like, all right, well, I did decent. I stayed out of trouble. Nothing happened. Clearly, that like maybe people are like, okay, maybe it was just Atlanta that like was really driving him crazy, and now he's matured a little bit and can move on. And then Atlanta just releases me, and I'm like, bro, what was even the point of signing me then? Again, why would you accept my thing, send me there, nothing really bad happened, and then just release me? Like, they didn't shake my hand. They didn't have a meeting. They had, once I left to go on loan, I never spoke to anybody again. For the first homegrown player ever, the disagreements, whatever, I left on loan in January of 2020, and I never spoke to anybody at Atlanta basically ever again. I talked to one of the coordinator or like the travel team coordinators. I didn't speak to anybody else ever again.
But that's what you wanted.
It was great, but it's just like they sent my agent a thing that said, hey, we're releasing him. Carlos never spoke another word to me again. Darren never spoke another word to me again. Tony Annan, who we all grew up with, who was a person there, never spoke to me again. And again, Tony was somebody that was like a friend growing up that stabbed me in the back with this stuff too, who was feeding them all information about this, that, the other, blah, blah, blah.
Really?
Who, like, I used to go to the national team coaches because he would ask me when I was the national team to hype him up so that he could maybe get a national team job. And I would go in there and do favors for Tony and say, yeah, Tony's great. I love Tony, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
Come see Atlanta United. He'd sell me out. Never spoke to him again. Called me an idiot and all that stuff, which is fine. But, like...
To you or to just behind?
No, to me. To me. He told me I was an idiot. But, like, he was also an idiot growing up.
In context of everything that happened?
Yeah, just, you're wasting your career. You're this, that, the other. And, again, it was just pointing the finger at me. It was never really like, why are you feeling this way? Why are you whatever? It's just like, stop being an idiot. And I'm like, look, man, I'm mad. Like, I'm going to be an idiot.
Yeah.
And it's just, as somebody that was kind of a longtime friend, coach type of thing, you grow those relationships with coaches, for years. And it just, that kind of hurt because he never texted me when I was at Indy. He never texted me after my career. But not after my career, but after in any other club. It just never spoke again, which is fine. But, like, I thought that was kind of sad because that was somebody, like, I got a good relationship with growing up.
Yeah. I mean, no, I definitely think it is.
After what happens after Indy? Like, or Atlanta releases you.
Yeah.
And you're just a free agent.
Now the story's getting good.
Well, I'm just curious from a soccer standpoint, from a professional standpoint, what was the next move for you?
So at that point,
not so much the next day or whatever.
Yeah.
But professionally speaking, like, where was your head at? Where were you going? What was gonna happen?
At that point, I was free. I was hype whenever I knew I was out of there. I thought, this is the end of this chapter. I am 20 years old. Most kids aren't even out of college, and they make great MLS careers out of it. Look at Julian Gressel, somebody like that. I thought this was just a new start, onto something new.
Yeah.
Probably go to USL team. Me and my agent were still kind of holding out. There was a couple MLS teams looking at me at the time. That was like Red Bull and Cincinnati was debating about me. That offseason, 2021 offseason, or
going into 2021.
And so I had a few USL offers, like New Mexico, Charleston, Vegas, I think, a couple others, that weren't like great offers, but like I was okay going to USL and trying to work my way back up. I knew I was good, so I could just play my way back. But we were still holding out for maybe a last spot on Red Bull or Cincinnati, because that was their expansion year, I'm pretty sure. They decided to go with Ben Mines, which I don't know about that decision, but they went with Ben Mines. So anyway, so that happens, and I'm starting to get to the decision of, okay, do I want to go this team, that team, whatever. It's probably back down to USL. It's fine. There's a day in January. I think it was the 6th day of the month.
Oh, was it?
That month.
That day?
Yeah.
That day?
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm not going to tiptoe around it.
Let's just get into it.
Yeah. I was planning on going up there for a week or so or whatever. And again, it was just supposed to be some big rally, like Trump rally. I'm a big Trump fan, as you can tell by my hat. I got into politics really heavy during COVID. I think everybody picked up some new hobby.
Yeah.
Politics was my hobby. And I was like, why do people say all this bad stuff about me? Watching his interviews up there every single day, he's on there talking.
Trump.
Like during COVID, where he gave speech after speech after speech every day, updating about stuff. I was like, I don't really see what's so bad about this guy. And so it kind of got me curious of why people hate him so much. So kind of dove into it and found I like him. So I wanted to go up there because I just thought it would be a really cool day. It's our off season. It's just a big rally. I thought it'd be like a really cool event to go to.
Yeah.
I wasn't really doing anything. I had a friend that was going. Some of my family were supposed to go, but then they ended up not going. But I still went with my friend because they were already going. So I was like, I might as well go. And I get up there, and it's one of the most beautiful days. Like at the start, like there's like 1 million people. Like people are like, oh, it was like 20 or 30,000 people. Bro, there was hundreds of thousands of people in that city that day. So like, again, it wasn't like some little fluky something in that like where a small percentage of people started doing bad stuff. Like there was hundreds of thousands of people here that like the whole streets of DC are filled. Like shoulder, it's like you're at a mosh pit. And then a lot of people started to do some dumb stuff, and we can go back and forth on what we think about that day. But
we can skip that part of it. But the fact is, you were there.
Yeah, I was there.
When did you leave, though?
I was sitting there. When did
you leave to go? When did you leave to go?
I went on January 5th. Just drove
so you
up
left
that
you
night.
left the night the night before.
Yeah, and it's so funny because people are like,
So
one of the things they say on
so
Twitter, because I posted that thing on Snapchat,
Yes, there's a
like,
picture.
better
There's a
late than
picture.
never.
There's a picture.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
the better late than never.
What's funny is that we were just talking about this before, and I was like, I can't find a timestamp as to when he posted this.
Mm-hmm. I posted it at 5 a.m. whenever we were getting there.
But I
on the 5th.
Yes, on the 5th.
So that's the thing. You look at it now, and maybe this has kind of hurt you in terms of trying
After
to.
everybody's already left the Capitol, I'm just showing up. Is that what people are thinking?
Well, no. The thought was that the 6th has already happened, and you are essentially
the forces.
Joining the forces.
You are late to the party.
That's what the misconception was.
Yeah.
And so that's why I
people just talk. They have no idea what they're
But
talking about.
so that's why I was curious as to what day you drove up there, because
That's so funny. I never viewed it that way.
because that's so no. But hold on. This is after the fact though. This is years late. This is how long ago this?
This was 2021.
Yeah. So they're thinking. I'll paint the picture as they're thinking. I'm sitting at my house on TV. Watching
the
down,
insurrection
and I'm
happen
like,
at the Capitol.
I got to get to DC in 9 hours, and I just like, okay,
That's if you look at it now, not knowing, and that's why I was looking for a timestamp, because I was like, I'm pretty sure the way that I remember it is that you,
which just shows though,
like
how,
that picture made the rounds, like as everything was kind of going down.
Nobody thinks about it whenever I post it, because nobody knew anything about that day that wasn't involved in politics. Sorry, nobody knew anything about it, which isn't bad or good. It's just nobody really knew anything of it until January 6th became January 6th.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, didn't Andrew just post something that he was going to that? Let me go find it. And so they screenshot it and whatever.
So to clarify, you go up there for the rally, right?
Yeah.
To support the movement of what it was, the fact that people went up there.
Yeah.
You're talking about
Did you
100,000
guys like
people were
super
there.
late on the 5th?
Yeah, so she, my friend that I had worked with, she had work. So she got out of work at, say, 4, 5 p.m., and we leave from down here at 6 or 7 p.m., so obviously it's a 9-10 hour drive. We're going to get up there pretty dang early in the morning.
And then so when the whole insurrection happened, the craziness, when everything happened, when everything, we don't have to get into it, but when everything happened, when the craziness happened, people barging in, whatever, all the craziness happened, however you feel.
The grandmas.
However you feel. When did you pull out of that? What happened there?
Yeah.
Like, when did you?
So Donald Trump had his speech over by the big pointy building way far away from the Capitol, or from the actual Capitol where all this stuff went down.
Yeah.
And so we were over there for a couple hours hanging out, again, in the huge group of people watching his speech go down. And then he says, peacefully and patriotically march down to the Capitol, because that's where the stuff is happening that's supposed to be just people hanging out while they're having some vote that's going on inside of the Capitol. And so we're supposed to make our voices heard by just being there and showing support of saying, hey, I don't think what happened in this election is legit. I think you should not cast your vote for, say, Georgia, to cast their vote for the Electoral College that says, hey, our votes are accurate and this is what we got.
Yeah.
We want an investigation into it because I don't think this is legit. And so, anyway, again, hundreds of thousands of people march over there. And it kind of starts nice and simple. And they're far away from – there's nobody in the Capitol whenever, like, we're all kind of walking over there started yet. And then about an hour goes by of us just kind of hanging out there. Some people are chanting and singing and whatever. And then people kind of start doing some other stuff. And that's whenever all that breaks down. So as it kind of starts – I'm trying to, like, watch it go down kind of from afar. And then I start getting a phone call from my mom, and it's like, are you okay? Like, where are you? Like, is everything all right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, we're watching on TV. Like, it looks like everybody's going crazy. Blah, blah, blah. Like, it looks terrible. And I'm like, we're literally sitting here singing the national anthem around, like, a ton of people just, like, casually having a day, not even realizing what's really going on up there. So, again, that's kind of how I found out it started to be bad. And I probably watched for another 15, 20 minutes before I was like, yeah, this is not going to look good whenever I get home.
Yeah. But you were thinking that because you knew you posted about it on the social media.
About it. And at that point, it's kind of already too late. But, like, again, I didn't know what was going to happen or go down or whatever. And but at that point, there's nothing I could do about it because I was already there. But, again, like, that was kind of a year where everybody wanted to say their 2 cents in politics on whatever side of the aisle they were on. Mostly on the other side is, you know, younger people and athletes mostly tend to lean left. And so everybody could post whatever they wanted about the left and support whatever cause on that side. And that's completely fine, and that's how it should be. But the one time that, like, I started to do that, it just kind of continued to dig on into this kid's an idiot because at that point most people
was
not
like the fourth,
Trump
fifth thing.
Yeah, where they're like, all right, yeah, screw this guy. Now I don't like him because of his dumb decisions, and I don't like him because I disagree with his beliefs and his political whatever stuff.
Yeah.
You heard all this was going on from your parents. What do you do next?
I mean, we just sitting there watching for 15, 20 minutes, and that's really because, like, where we are, we can't really see, like, it really starting to get bad. And by, like, the next 15, 20 minutes, we can kind of see from afar that there's kind of, like, some smoke things going on and whatever. The police are trying to hold them off or whatever. And so that's whenever we kind of, like, all right, let's get out of here. Yeah. But, again, like, we're, like, a couple hundred yards away. So, like, we're not, like, there to really know what's going on, but we can kind of see some stuff that doesn't look great from afar. So at that point, we're like, let's get out of here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that was good to clarify and talk about that because there's also, I mean, just as much as we talk about the other stories, the passport.
There are certainly people that think you went up there specifically.
That you went up there to be a part of that.
The people that do this don't think logically at all. So, like, again, grandmas were hunted down for months. Houses raided by the FBI to find anybody that was involved in anything to do with that. Don't you think some professional athlete that's known by a ton of people, if I had done something wrong or illegal or whatever, I would have been the first one caught.
Yeah.
Everybody would have known exactly, okay, that's Andrew Carleton, plays for Atlanta United, blah, blah, blah.
I think the only reason we found out is because you posted about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And again, maybe I just shouldn't have posted something about it, but, like, I didn't, again, it just doesn't make sense because if I thought it was going to be something bad, I would never post something about it or that would, like, hurt my career like that. It was just supposed to be a rally of Trump's had many rallies. It's just supposed to be another one of that. That was a little bit bigger because it was the whole country of people coming from all over, which I thought would be a really cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't go
So, you can go ahead.
I was going to say, what's the – how does that hurt you moving forward? Or does it hurt you moving forward?
So that 2021 year for you was pretty crazy.
I woke up on January 7th and had 0 offers left. So everybody took an offer off. Anybody that had an offer
took their offer on the table. You're saying because of the moment that the January 6th happened and it was getting out there to the media, and so teams didn't want to have anything to do with you?
Yeah.
Did they give you that specific reason?
My agent called me and was like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? What am I supposed to tell these people? I'm like, I don't know. That's your job. You're the agent. Like, I didn't do anything wrong or else I'd be in jail. Like, I can't have my beliefs and my whatever. I get the day went crap, but I didn't do anything wrong. Like, it's your decision or your job to sort out. And kind of on that day, like, I knew we were never going to speak again. And me and my agent never spoke after that day.
Jeez.
You never spoke to me again?
My agent left. The contracts were no longer on the table. I had to go find a new agent.
And this is January, so you're already into the off season.
Yeah.
Pretty.
I was holding out, hoping for that MLS thing, and now there's nothing available. And now there's nothing available because nobody needs a player, or like the offer isn't there because I'm not a good soccer player. It's no longer there because of January 6th.
Really?
Which is why, because on January 6th morning, the offer was still sitting
So
there.
did your agent, the agent at the time, did he tell you that like these teams pulled out because of that reason?
I never spoke to the agent again. I got a new agent that had tried to do some stuff, and they're just like,
and he just said,
we can't sign him.
We can't
have him be a part of our club.
Clubs were saying we can't sign him because we don't want to deal with that.
No, we don't want any part of that.
So who's the new?
You know how majority soccer is left leaning.
Who was the agent that you started to begin working with after that? What was his name?
I worked with a couple different random people that was basically like, if you can get me a trial or something, I'll go.
Yeah.
But then I started work with Masood Rushendel.
Okay.
He grew up in Georgia. I think he started Atlanta Fire.
Did you see the thing that started going out that like there was some leaked?
Yeah.
There was some leaked. I guess it
email
was
or
an
something like
email.
that?
It was a leaked email here.
Yeah,
it says
what
that was leaked from people. It was just saying that an agent is shopping Andrew Carleton, trying to downplay his appearance at the Capitol insurrection on January 6th. You've seen that?
Yeah. It was some like American owner of some team over there, that some lefty liberal that like wanted, I guess some agent that like I had spoke to that was trying to find me a spot that said, hey, we have this guy, and kind of
that person leaked it.
Yeah, put
the owner leaked
the stuff in it that says, he was involved, like he was there on January 6th, but like didn't do anything wrong, which is completely accurate. And this guy's trying to blow it out of the water as like what is there to blow out of the water? Again, if I did something wrong, I would be in jail just like everybody else is, because they hunted him down like.
So it just says here. It says a couple of the incidents that we discussed about in Atlanta, and it says, he has not been involved in any professional incidents past 20 months. However, he has been publicly supportive of Donald Trump and his Republican Party in the 2020 U.S. elections, which has been publicly frowned upon in the media at that time. It was publicly frowned upon if you were a Trump supporter in 2020. And then it says nothing racial or inciting, though. So meaning that you're not a racist. And that you weren't there for that reason.
I mean, my best friend I've had my whole life is a Jamaican dude, so it's hard to be racist and friends with a Jamaican dude, but continue.
Yeah. And so from there, you're into late 2021. No one wants to sign you because of that.
And so Georgia Storm, baby.
So yeah, we'll get into that, towards the end of this there. So yeah, what happens there? Then you're just kind of like, listen, I just got
trials and didn't really work out. I wasn't playing, so it was hard to stay sharp, and like you're just training on your own every single day.
Yeah. Which is the toughest thing to do. For me, that's the most difficult part of being a free agent. And I mean, maybe in any professional sports, is when you have nothing lined up. Like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But you know that something might just appear out of nowhere.
And you got to be ready
and you just got to be ready for it. And so you're getting up in the early hours, or you're working out in the late evenings. And in your head, you're thinking, this is all for nothing, right? Because technically there's nothing there.
And every month that goes by, you're eating further and further and further into any money that you have saved.
Exactly,
where you're like, is it time to turn the page?
Exactly,
And so, I did that for a full year, basically, because I was training with Georgia Storm.
Yeah. But you signed with a Costa Rica. So how did...
Because my agent worked in Costa Rica, and it was kind of like a last resort of like, hey, man, we got freaking nothing. Like, I could send you to this team in the middle of the Costa Rican jungle.
So you flew to Costa Rica and signed
with the first division team there. That was like one of the worst teams in the league. But
were they paying you?
$400 US a month.
A month.
But like that was enough to get by, like in
Costa Rica.
Yeah, in that little town in Costa Rica.
You weren't eating any money you'd already saved up, at least.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Except where were you living? Like where were you? How were you getting around? Like in a country you don't speak Spanish. You're in Costa Rica.
You just walked. There was dirt roads. Like again, I went pretty far to try to keep my dream alive playing soccer, and it was hard, and I hated it. But like I kept faith that like God gave me this talent for a reason. Like He put me through a lot of tough things, and I became a better person through them, and I'm not the idiot even at that point that I was whenever I was younger. And I just thought that, like, this is his battle for me, and I've got to continue to push through it and keep faith, and something will work out.
Yeah.
And so I the coach that signed me down there got fired the game after I got signed there. And you know how the South American dudes are. They'll bring in their whole like group of boys to play on the team and whatever. And so like the next game, the coach clearly hated me and was like, "We don't want this gringo."
And so you just
You don't want this gringo.
Oh my god.
And so then after 2 or 3 months down there, I just came home and was like, "Bro, this ain't worth it."
That is crazy.
And then ended up Landon Donovan. I guess somehow something like he owed my agent a favor or something like that, and he was like, "Yeah, Andrew can come on trial here for 2022 because the whole year is gone and I have nothing."
You've been training, but like you're not playing.
I'm playing NPSL team. And,
is that like a full circle moment at that point where you're like, you know, even if you think about it, like for example, I respect you a lot for it because my pride would kick in. I'd be like, man, I'm the first homegrown player for Atlanta United. Played MLS games, played, USL Championship games, U.S. Youth National Team, Under-17 World Cup, Under-20 U.S. National Team. And then you're playing in the NPSL in Georgia, so like a non-professional league.
Yeah, there was one moment in a game where I was talking crap to some dude. It literally hit me in the middle of the game. I was like, bro, I went from like the #1 player in the country to I'm talking crap in an NPSL random league game with some dude that like probably plays D2 or D3 soccer, and I'm talking crap with him because I'm passionate and want to win this game.
But then you're also thinking like, yeah.
But it was kind of like, one of those kind of like, it's kind of one of those cool things because like, dang, it shows like how high and how low you can go in your career. Yeah. But also of like, man, there's a long way back to the top of where I'm at right now.
Yeah. So ultimately you get that opportunity at Loyal with Landon Donovan where he's like, hey, come in on trial.
Yeah.
And so you impress and you end up signing
there. Yeah, he basically says, hey, we're going to give him league minimum if we give him a contract at all. And it's going to be hard to give him a contract. Like, he's going to have to really impress because of the things we've heard and like seen about him and whatnot. Obviously, he's a talented player, but like San Diego Loyal's always been big on stuff off the field, being a good person, this, that, the other, which I think all clubs are. But with a lot of their things that have happened there at that club before I had got there, they were even bigger on that type of stuff with Colin Martin and Elijah Martin, stuff like that.
With the homophobia and stuff like that. Yeah.
Did you see it as like this could be the start to the second chance?
Yeah, I knew I could. I knew I wasn't a bad person. I knew I could play. So it's like as long as I could get there and show somebody like, hey, the stuff people say about me is not really that true. I knew I could get an opportunity to kind of get back into swing of things, and so I went there. And
do you think Landon saw that? Like he knew you were a good kid, and he was like, listen, let me.
I think he had hope, and that like he kind of had dealt with stuff in his career where he knows how people can make bigger stories out of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think he knows, okay, like let's see what this guy's talking about. Masood's obviously vouching for him and says, many positive things. So let's give him an opportunity.
Was that a conversation you had, or was that like just between agent?
That was between agent and Landon.
Yeah.
And then I went there and had a pretty good preseason as best as I could, really. And it's funny because it's not even like you go there to play well. It's to prove that you're not a like right-wing extremist, super racist, whatever dude. That was really. It was like a personality test.
They wanted you, but exactly. They wanted you, but they didn't know if.
Yeah, they didn't know if all these stories that Bill, Bob, and Jim on Twitter talked about were true or not.
Yeah.
And so that was really what it was when I got there. I didn't really care how I played because I was a good player, but like everybody knew that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I ended up signing for the team. News broke and Twitter went nuts. I was just refreshing my Twitter and it was just stuff.
People talking about you.
Yeah. They're like, no
what
way
were they saying?
They would do this. Because they were San Diego Loyal. I mean, San Diego is a very left-leaning city. California, they're very left-leaning. So like this crazy Trump guy that nobody else wanted is signing in San Diego. Like, what are they doing? Like, they're stabbing all their fans in the back because that's how blah, blah, blah. And so basically all the fans said, we are not coming to the game unless Andrew apologizes for supporting Donald Trump or he's kicked off the team. Now, credit to San Diego Loyal and Landon in them because they all stood up for me. Colin Martin was one of the best because he literally came out and said, because it was weird because like guys somewhat knew my story, but they didn't know the full thing. So as I'm signed and announced, we're all at home, afternoon. People go on Twitter and everybody's seeing it. So I go into the training ground the next day.
And
like, everybody now knows the full story. And like, because I didn't say, hey, yeah, I'm that guy that like did that. They kind of knew some of them, but not everybody. And you just didn't really talk about it. And Colin was the first one that came up to me kind of immediately and was like, hey man, like I saw all the stuff on there. Like just know that like we have your back. Like, you know, don't listen to all those people. We know like how you are as a person. You know, obviously we can have some disagreements on stuff, but like that's what America's about. And I thought that was one of the nicest things.
Yeah,
that's Colin, who's definitely a left-leaning person. He was the first person to come up and say something like that to me, and so
that's awesome.
The rest of the team kind of rallied around it too. And again, I'm a nice dude, and like I get along with everybody, so like there wasn't ever a problem.
Yeah.
But the fans were still not happy. And so I had to go on a podcast, literally the last podcast I think I did.
That was the one you were talking about.
That's the one I was talking about.
Yeah, I literally had to go on a podcast.
It was San Diego Lawyers podcast.
And they told me, they were like, you have to apologize. Now they're talking with like Landon and the supporters groups and stuff like that. They're like, he has to apologize for like supporting Donald Trump or we don't want him part of the team. And Landon was like, yeah, this is what they want you to do. And I was like, I ain't fucking apologizing. You're out of your mind if I'm going to apologize for my beliefs and who I am. I'm not apologizing. I said, I'll go address what happened so I can clarify the situation, but I'm not apologizing. He said, no, like you shouldn't apologize. Like you have your beliefs. You didn't do anything wrong. Like you need to walk them through what happened. But like I give credit to Landon because he didn't try to force me to apologize, which I thought was big.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of went on there and tried to smooth it over a little bit, basically.
I gotta take a look at that. I didn't even know you did that.
It's fine for the most part, but there are some awkward moments where
really?
It just feels like the dude's trying to.
He's trying to like push the button, like try to get there, or trying to.
It's like he's trying to convert him, like right there on the spot. Like I don't know how else to explain it, and I'm just like,
wow.
I don't know. I didn't. It's just an awkward listen at times.
Yeah, it was a weird situation, but like. Growing up in the spotlight, you get kind of used to dealing with those type of things a little bit, and I feel like I'm a decent talker. I'm not good at words, but I'm good at talking.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was able to kind of maneuver my way through it, and I ain't gonna apologize for who I am or my beliefs or anything like that. So.
So during the season after games, like, you know, normally if you like go to the fans and you like, clap your hands or you shake like a fan that's out there, like, you know, a good game, like, you know, you approach the fans, right? You want to do that. Like for you in your situation, was it like you kind of like try to keep your distance? The club was like, hey, by the way, like, or in media events where the fans are there and the players are there, like how did that whole?
Well, so some of the home fans were decent, you know, and kind of like were like, hey, let's give this guy the benefit of the doubt. But like a lot of them in any away game, I got called every name in the book. There were banners out every single game. F this guy. You know, he's a terrorist, he's an insurrectionist, calling me a fascist, and any word that you can come up with that you can think of. I was called that by my home supporters, by the away fans. Every game I went to, it just became like what it was. And there was even a couple moments where, you know how like whenever you don't start and maybe you play 10 minutes or 12 minutes or 0 minutes and you have to do runs after the game?
Yeah.
So there were a couple occasions where we're doing runs after the game, and I'm getting absolutely berated by our home fans, like on our home field.
On your home field.
Like calling me everything in the book. And it even got to a point where Jack Metcalf and a couple of the other guys like had to go like, hey, stop calling him that. Like he's our teammate. Like knock it off. Like, and of course, like the club did some things good, but they will never address that. And like, sure, other people get called some terrible things and some whatever, but as soon as it's a right-sided person that's getting called, a white dude that's getting called some obnoxious stuff, the game will never stop. Everything is fine. And again, I don't want it to stop or anything, but like later that season, I re-signed my contract with the team to come back. I leave and come back to Atlanta. And I get a call on the last day of the option deadline, like December 20-something, right before Christmas. That is almost like a lot of the way through the offseason has happened at that point.
Most of the teams have their players by then,
They called me and said, hey, we're trying to go MLS, and MLS really doesn't like you, and our fan base hates you even more, and so we're actually not going to pick up your option.
Really?
So I went from having first offseason ever, I was like, thankfully I get I know what I'm doing next season. I can go home, prepare for the season. I got a season back under my belt. now I can really go on and kind of get back into it. And I get a call most of the way through the offseason that says, we're not picking up your option, actually, after I've already signed the paper. And
they've signed the paper.
Said,
I
signed the paper before I left.
Yeah.
That they had already signed.
That
like,
they had
already
signed,
signed, but they didn't file it with the league. And so they.
So the paper was just sitting there. They hadn't filed it.
Is that allowed? Can they do that? I guess they can.
I mean, can you do it as far? Is it legal to do it as far as with the league? Yeah, if you don't turn in your paperwork, like that's fine. Is it legal because of the reasons why they said no? Because of my beliefs and who I am and my politics and religious beliefs, all that stuff. That's definitely not legal.
And they told you that verbatim on the phone. Like, listen, the reason why we're not picking you up is not a sporting decision. It's because we want to go MLS. People don't like you. The MLS doesn't like you for your political beliefs, and so
the fans don't like you. It was mainly driven by the fans and the fact that they're trying to go MLS.
They can probably. I'm trying to think. MLS isn't public. It's private, right?
Owned.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. Yeah. They can probably get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, you'd have to go through a lawsuit.
What I was wondering is if it was legal to.
So him to sign the
for
contract,
everyone to sign,
yeah.
and then
just to be like,
turn.
I mean, I'm
but
sure
if it isn't
it has
filed,
to be filed.
Yeah, I'm sure to some degree it's not legal. Is legal. I don't know. I didn't ever really think about a lawsuit.
But the point is, it's
like
just
that,
like it's just for you. It
yeah,
just
but
sucks.
it just sucks
Like,
because now I'm out of a team again. And
also
Nate Miller called me, the coach of the team at the time.
Yeah.
Him and Landon were co-coaching, and almost in tears just because he's like, man, I'm so sorry. Like, this is so messed up. Like, you don't deserve this. Like, you're one of the better, nice people on the team. Like, you're a good person and don't deserve what has happened. And just was like, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. But, like, I can't do anything here in San Diego.
Yeah.
And then Landon, unfortunately, never messaged me, which I wish he did. But because we had a pretty good relationship.
Landon never talked to you?
No.
Who was the one that called you?
Ricardo.
He was the sporting director? Oh, general
manager.
manager. But Landon never...
Yeah, the Carlos of there, basically.
Yeah.
And so, what was it? Landon sent a voice message to my agent that I still have on my phone. So if anybody on Twitter or whatever wants to take this and say, that didn't happen, you know.
Got proof.
Yeah, I don't want to let it go. But like, again, he said, "Look, man, it's not fair. It's not the right situation. He doesn't deserve this. But unfortunately, my hands are tied, and I'm not the one that loses millions of dollars funding the club, and he's the one that makes the decisions."
Yeah.
So.
But then ultimately, these people didn't even get the bid for MLS, right?
No, of course. Yeah. That's how God stabs them in the back. So yeah, they don't get the bid. Yeah.
And then new ownership takes.
Yeah,
takes
but then
control
I ended up getting Vegas, which was nice, but we were not very good.
What was the transition from San Diego to Vegas? Like, what did you go through the same sort of issues, or
Vegas was pretty lenient.
I was gonna say, was it an easier?
Their owner did not care about the team at all. So, and so the guy that was in charge of putting the team together was just trying to put a good team together. And most people that are involved in soccer, most people that make the decisions, they don't care about all the political stuff that people whine and complain and this, that, the other about. They care about the fans' reaction. And so, like, a lot of the people that I would talk to, like, that are GMs or making decisions about signing with teams would be like, look, like, we like Andrew. Like, he's a really good player. He could easily play on our team, but our fans are going to hate him, so we're not signing him.
Yeah.
And that was the answer I got team after team after team after team after team after team for 2 years. And Vegas, they didn't really care. So the guy, again, the GM that's making the decisions there in Vegas, he didn't care about it. And there wasn't a huge fan base of Vegas fans that were going to complain about it because Vegas has all this other stuff going on. So I was able to kind of slip in and be a part of the team and was a leader on the team. And it was one of the funner years that I had in my professional career because I was able to play, made some great relationships with guys. My best friend there is a super lefty, Luke Stoffer. Ugh, can't stand that guy. But we like to have debates and stuff. But, like, it was just a good year. And that was the first year in my career, 7 or 8 years later, that, like, I actually just got to be a part of a team and play.
Enjoy the game.
Game. We weren't good. I had a blast playing, though, because I was playing week in, week out for the first time in my career.
Yeah. We played against each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how that was the only game you guys won all year, too.
we were horrible, too. But we beat them.
Yeah.
I remember that was a funny game.
Yeah. But it's another reason, I guess, why I would sit here and say I'm retired is after that season, I missed the last 7 or 8 games of the year and I was on the worst team in the league by quite a lot, and I was like third or fourth in chances created in the whole league, which as a 10, that was like my main responsibility. So we didn't score very many of the chances, and I didn't score much, but if you look at that top 10 list, at the time that I was out for the season, like the 26th or 27th game, which is a pretty big chunk of games, all of those players whether now are playing in MLS contracts or guaranteed starting spots on a bunch of the best USL teams in the league. It's the Aaron Malloys and what's the young kid that played at Charleston's name?
Oh, Barajas?
Yeah, Barajas or Moreno from New Mexico. Like, it's up with those guys that I'm competing with numbers-wise that are guaranteed starters in all these teams.
Yep.
And I go into the offseason like, okay, finally, now I can the January 6th stuff years away, the immature stuff in Atlanta is years ago. Now I get a fresh offseason to be able to get, like, a decent team.
Yeah.
And I got 0 offers this offseason.
Crickets.
Every team said, look, we like them, but we can't take them because our fans will not going to like them, and it's going to cause drama and blah, 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 blah.
What's the last conversation you had with the team? How long ago was that?
I think it was Chattanooga to play League One, because I was thinking about playing Chattanooga or maybe Tormenta League One just as one more year and kind of say, hey, this is my last year playing, so I can kind of come to terms with it and transition into something else that's kind of close to home here in Atlanta. But they were still I think Chattanooga said we'll give you league minimum, and I'm like, dude, I've played 100-something USL games in my career. I'm not playing League One for league minimum, which is like $1,000 a month. I've already done my time paying for my past sins. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Should you? Yeah.
It's time to move on to something different, and that time is just, as much as I felt like God was opening the doors in the past, I felt like this is Him saying, look, I put you through these things. You've learned a bunch of tough lessons. You became a lot stronger and better man through it. And now I have something else for you to do in life, and it's time to learn what you've learned and move on to a new chapter. And so that's kind of where we're at now.
But I mean, one of the main reasons also that I wanted to have you when we started this podcast for Torres Football Performance was that one of the main reasons I wanted you on it was for your story. I think is incredible through the ups and downs you've been. You've experienced the highs of soccer, and then you've experienced like the lowest of lows. Whether, playing NPSL, going to Costa Rica for 3 months, whatever it might be. You've seen it all, like the grind, and I think it's good for kids or anyone that's trying to make it to kind of see the realities of the game and what you can kind of face. And also for people to kind of get to know you better as a person and to know, hey, listen, this is what happened. This is the build-up to why everything happened. Yeah. Whether they like you as a person or not, whether they believe in what you believe, because ultimately everyone's going to have different beliefs. I'm not going to touch into that. It's not. Everyone has their beliefs. You're entitled to your belief. Other people are entitled to theirs. But it doesn't take away from the person that you are, right? Obviously, I grew up playing with you. I know how talented you are. For me, it's criminal that you're not playing. Like, it's criminal.
To you.
Yeah. Well, we both have our different reasons. My reason is different than yours, obviously, why I'm not playing, but, I think it's good for you to kind of share this side of things and clear the air. And
I appreciate you guys having me here. I've enjoyed it. I've held all these stories in
I'm
for
so,
years.
I like, he kept talking about how, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. There's going to be so much that he, unveils. And it's kind of crazy thinking about it now, going back to, I guess I hate asking this, but like, is it even possible for you to look at the Atlanta United years with any kind of fondness at this point? Maybe there are moments.
Yeah, there's
that
moments
you think about, but
there's a lot of moments. I mean, there's dreams that like you had as a kid that you did achieve that I did achieve.
Yeah.
That like I think now you can look back and people say, "Oh, you regret it. I don't really regret much. I don't look at it as like, dang, those were the worst years ever. I had so much fun through a lot of that time. But again, my fun went from soccer to all the stuff of being Andrew Carleton. Andrew Carleton was cool, and that's why life was fun.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because of his soccer; it was because of other stuff. Which, like, being a Atlanta celebrity in a way, that was a sick life to live for a little bit of time. And that made life fun, but like that wasn't what I was here for. And that becomes disappointing, but like you live with it and move on, happy with how life is now.
Yeah.
So it's not like I sit here and cry and regret about it. So
Do you ever watch any Atlanta United games or anything like that?
unless my brother's playing.
Oh yeah, well, yeah.
He's on the second team, but
Yeah,
like he's
yeah.
played one first team.
Is your brother better than you? Do you think?
Heck no. No, I was kidding. No, my brother's good. He's the complete opposite of me. So
Playing style wise.
personality.
Oh, but yeah,
everything.
yeah,
So
everything.
like, I know a lot of people probably sit there and be like, "Oh, well, his brother's a fucking nut job." Like, Alan must be the same way. My brother is the complete opposite of me, and you kind of know Alan a little bit.
Yeah.
He's the complete opposite of me in everything. So I think I don't know who's better. I think he'll have a better career though.
Yeah.
Which is at the end of the day what matters. I think I'm more talented than him.
Yeah.
I see people on there that talk now about how like I wasn't super talented growing up and that I was overhyped and this, that, the other.
Yeah.
But like I think I was more talented than Alan and probably more talented than anybody that's came through the Atlanta Academy and majority of MLS academies around the country. But I think Alan will have a better career because he's a more level-headed, just stay out of trouble for all the rules kid.
I can tell you, we really wanted you to play during the Frank DeBoer era.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember anytime you did come in, and you're right, it wasn't nearly enough, but anytime you did come in, it felt like there was a spark that's why I mentioned the whole super sub thing, because whenever you did come off the bench, whenever you were in the game, it seemed like
that was my job.
There was either creativity or stuff was happening that was so different from the what everyone called the boring style of Frank DeBoer.
That's the reason I was great, was not because I was better than anybody else at receiving the ball and passing it sideways and doing that more effective than anybody else, but it was because I made mistakes, but every time I was on the field, there was always something that was about to happen. Whether if it was in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes or a whole game, I was always able to find something to do, to create something, to try something that nobody else was going to do. And it might not have always worked, but it always kept everybody on the edge of their seat wondering what was about to happen. And that's what was fun. That was the beauty of soccer to me. And I didn't really get a touch on this much in the interview, but like that's what I lost after everything kind of went down. After you go from playing at such a high level to now you're training all the time by yourself, you lose that confidence, you lose the sharpness, you lose the... I don't even want to say like... hopefully some people listening will like this idea of... I battle with in my head of... I think my brain, once I stopped playing at such a high level, was still kind of tuned in to the speed and the rhythm of that high game, and my body couldn't perform on that level anymore. So the game was happening at a slower pace in my head at a lower level that like, you know, whenever you play a game and you have too much time and you overthink everything.
Yeah.
I think that started to happen to me a lot in the last couple years of my career where like my mind was processing things faster than it needed to for the speed of that game.
Yeah.
To where then I had enough time to overthink everything and was trying to do too much. And I don't know exactly what happened, but that's one of the little debates I have in my head.
Yeah.
Just thinking back on a lot of things of more me just ranting about it, but like stuff that I held in for a while.
I guess kind of the last thing to kind of end it on, you know, you talked about, you know, you don't have regrets, right? And so I want to touch on that a little bit. When you look back, you know, I mean, okay, you can say you're tired. I mean, I'm hoping something pops up. You never know. Soccer, you just never know, right?
Yeah.
But for now, we talk about when you look back at your career from 14 years old, U.S. youth national teams, all the way up to where you are now. Do you look at it and tell yourself like, you know, wow, what I achieved a lot, or I did this, I'm proud of that? Or is it that you look at it and you think like, man, what could have been? Like, yeah, I did
it's
well,
more
and
what could have been.
It's more what could have been.
Yeah, it's not. It's a weird one to explain because it's not like when I say I would regret it, it makes it seem like I sit here every day and it's like, oh my God, just eat myself alive over it. And it's like, I love my life now and I'm super happy with it. And I think that's one of the things that like going through this has taught me is to be always grateful for every little thing that you have.
Yeah.
And I get to learn a lot of lessons that I get to pass on to other people. And I, coach now. And so I get to pass a lot of stuff that I've learned down to the next generation.
And your brother
cool.
who's playing professionally
my brother, stuff like that. But like, I more so think about like what could have been if I didn't go here in Atlanta. If I just would have held it out and went overseas. Did something different. Again, I think that's more of my what if thought is not like necessarily I reacted the way I reacted in certain situations.
It's just if I just didn't
start there at all,
in Atlanta,
what could have happened?
Yeah.
Because again, you can regret certain things from the past, but like you can't simulate those emotions that you felt during those times where you made those decisions.
Yeah.
So it's just hard. You can nitpick any little thing, but if I were to pick one thing, I wonder what could have been if I just would have not signed in Atlanta and waited in residency to go overseas somewhere.
Yeah.
So.
Can I ask you a terrible question to end on?
Yeah, so excited.
When you found out that Carlos Bocanegra was no longer with Atlanta United, you felt
5 years too late. I don't know.
Andrew Carleton, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't know.
Cool. Well, I mean,
I kind of stopped caring about
Gotcha.
what goes on over there a long time ago. So,
Yeah.
But sort of along that line.
That's it.
But I think a lot of fans would feel that way though too.
No,
correct?
we thought So, we thought there was a lot of. I never liked the pity. Well, I didn't like it after the fact. I never liked. There was a lot of signings that I just didn't like. This is from you were in it, so it's a different.
Yeah.
You see it a different way, but the fans at least didn't like the pity signing for the most part. Well, some did, but I didn't. The Barco thing never panned out in the sense that the whole reason he was supposed to come over was to then get sold off to some big European club. It worked out for Pity, but kind of by the happy stroke of luck.
Yeah, by what he did beforehand.
Well, not only that, but
Middle East
but
was
the
spending
fact
all that money on the perfect time, and
exactly, and they were just looking for really anyone that could play at a relatively high level, and he perfect timing. And since then, it's just been. I mean, look what Atlanta United has been since essentially 2018, 2019. It's just been a kind of a comedy of errors. And the way they let him go, at least the way they announced how they let him go, is just kind of indicative of his time. I think everyone was kind of waiting for that, and it wasn't really on his terms. You can tell it wasn't on his terms. You can tell it was like, I think we've just had enough of you.
Yeah, I don't know what goes on over there anymore, so I don't have anything to really say. I know a lot of people, even back then, were kind of not a huge fan, but it's not really I don't make the decisions.
Who was your? Because I think a lot of Atlanta United fans would be curious to know who was your of the notable players out there. Because I'm sure there's some that, like regular starting 11. Who was the one that you liked hanging around with or playing with, or like what's the?
So obviously my best friends were all the younger guys for the most part. But out of the like notable guys, my closest friends were probably Nagby. And Josef, me and him got along decently too. I gave Josef the ball whenever I was on the field and he would score, so he got along with me pretty good. And then Nagby was
great player.
Good friend. Yeah,
cool.
Player. So underrated.
Well, this is the longest one we've done so far, so thank you so much.
I think I missed my tea time.
I appreciate it. I saw 3 o'clock roll around.
It was 3 o'clock?
Like,
wow.
I think we're screwed, but so sorry about that. But thanks for doing this. Thank you for talking to us. And
no problem. Thank you guys for having me. I enjoyed this. Is what I was
glad you could share your story. You're part of the story because I had no idea.
All right.
Cool. That's it. See you later, everybody.